Welcome to Farm Charm Chic. I'm Emily. Today's episode is a mega video. I recently did a poll asking you guys what you would like to see. It was an overwhelming response as far as you want to see everyday decor DIY. So I have compiled 50 of my favorite everyday decor DIYs and put them in this mega video for you today. I will have many more new everyday decor DIYs coming your way very soon. With that being said, I hope that you enjoy. If you like crafting, DIYs, dupes, hacks, thrift flips, or just creating in general, I would love if you would consider subscribing. If you like any of today's projects or your favorite made the list, be sure to leave a thumbs up. But let's get right into these DIYs. I picked up this little picture at the thrift store because I actually really liked the frame of it. And when I got it, I had no idea what I wanted to do with it. And it ends up being kind of a detailed project, a lot of little components that go into it. But I love how it turns out in the end. Now, the backing of it just had that paper on there and it was glued on so well. And these little staples are so hard to get out here. It reminds me of when you're deconstructing a canvas. So I just remove all of those to get to the frame. And I'm just using some foam core board. Gosh, that was hard for me to say. Some foam core board, but you could easily use like some cardboard, even like the paper, like the actual picture, the matting that came in it would work. Just anything for a sturdy background there. And I'm taking just some scrapbook paper that looks like some wood slats here. I thought that that would be really cute to use. Now I'm just taking some white wax. So the white wax is going to brighten up this frame, and I'm just going through. This frame has a lot of texture and a lot of grooves. That's why I thought it would be perfect to use this on. So I'm giving it a very good coat. Now this stuff goes on quite thick. It's a little bit different consistency than paint is, and so you're going to be able to kind of wipe it off. So once I get it covered on there and let it dry a little bit, I'm just taking my baby wipe and I'm just wiping around all of the edges where all those ridges and the texture is to kind of have that show through. I thought that that would be such a fun aged look, just a different distressing technique. And you can see how cute it's going to look with the contrast with that paper, that board that we have. Now I got a new glue gun, you guys. I'm loving this. This is a cordless glue gun, and I've had that glue gun I've used in my other DIYs for years and years. So I'm so excited to use this. But I'm just hot gluing this piece in here, and I think it looks really good so far. Now these windows came from Dollar Tree. They have a couple different types. If you have a chance to pick up the flat ones that are not these plastic three-dimensional ones, I think this would go a lot quicker, or else use some spray paint. For whatever reason, I just decided to hand paint this, and it did take a little bit of time just because of all those little nooks and crannies that you have to get paint into. But I'm just covering it with some white paint. Now maybe you could even find these in a white color. Whenever I find them at Dollar Tree, they're in always like these really like almost like a lavender color or that yellow color. So after I paint that, I just take a wooden tag. You can pick these up at Dollar Tree. You can buy them unfinished in bundles on Amazon. And I paint mine black to look like a chalkboard. And now I'm just going to distress all of the edges to it. So I'm just sanding all around really good to have it look. You can see there what it ends up looking like. Now this part is up to you what you decide to do, what you put on your little tag here. I have this little word hello on a chalk couture stencil here that I'm going to use. You'll see what ends up happening. It doesn't end up turning out the greatest, but I think it ends up like a happy accident. But I'm just using my chalk couture chalk paste here to go over this stencil. You could use your Cricut. You could handwrite something. You could print something on some tissue paper and decoupage it on there. But look at when I pull this back, you can kind of see it looks like it didn't really transfer the best. But I thought, hey, I'm really going for that distressed look, so let me just kind of touch it up a teeny bit so that way you can at least see all of the letters. And I kind of embraced that rustic look that came with it and decided I would just go with it. And so I ended up really liking it. But again, it was just a happy accident. So now I'm just going to take my window and line it up on my frame here, and you can kind of see how I'm going to put this together. I'm just using my hot glue to glue this on. You could use something a little bit extra if you wanted to. I felt like hot glue is going to be just fine for this project. Just wherever I could get a little extra glue onto there. And then I'm just going to line that up. I just eyeball everything when I line it up. So if you need a measure, definitely do that. Now I had tied this rope onto the tag there, and I liked having it look like there was rope tied onto it, but I didn't like the tails hanging off of there. So I decided to glue those down on the back. And I'm just taking a little sprig of some boxwood here. This just comes from Walmart. I love their boxwood. I keep it in my stash all the time. And then I wound a couple pieces together there with some twine, and I just glued it on kind of at an angle there. I did make a little twine bow for the little tag there, but I just think this turns out so cute. I love all the different elements to it. I love the look of the rustic barn wood with that gothic window and the greenery. I just think this all pulls together really beautifully. Do you guys like this one? I absolutely love making risers, and this is one of my favorites I've ever done. And this is all Dollar Tree products. You can see all of the different things that I used here. Now this piece that I'm opening here is completely decorative and optional. If you want to keep this under like that $5 price point, you could definitely remove that piece, but it really does add a fun, nice little decorative element to it. Now, I made one of these in one of my recent videos. I did a laser video, and I used a file and cut one out and made it with my laser. And I thought, how can I make this so everybody could make it? You wouldn't have to have a laser to make it. And the one I made was really small, and I thought, I want a bigger one. I loved it so much. So this was kind of just a brainchild. I've seen other people do these with some different Dollar Tree products, but I just love that this is all wood. It's so sturdy, and it's going to definitely be something I use for a really long time. So you can kind of see all of these different products that I use here. This is a shelf pack that came with 2 pieces of wood. I decided to only use one of the pieces, and this base here, you can use either one of the square drawers, or this is a pencil holder. One is a little bit wider, one's a little bit taller. I chose to go with the pencil holder that was a little bit taller, but any wooden box is going to work. Use your imagination. I mean, I kind of sat and just came up with different pieces that would work for this. Now this little shelf had some holes in the edge, and we definitely don't want those, so I'm just using some spackling to fill those holes in, and then I'm just using my fingernail file to smooth those out. That way you don't even tell that they're there. Now I'm going to use some wood glue on each of these different layers here. So I'm just putting some on this. And again, this little piece is just a decorative piece, but it really does add such a beautiful element to it. And we're making a riser that looks like a vintage scale. And so it looks really fun, and a lot of those vintage scales did have that kind of shape on them as that decorative piece there. Now this is going to be the face of the scale where the little dial is, so I'm gluing a couple of, I do a stack of 4 tumbling tower blocks and then another one here. The reason for this is I want this to be kind of at an angle, but I need contact points to be able to glue this on. So you'll see when I set this up against the pencil holder here, that it kind of sits at an angle there, and so you're going to glue each of those tumbling tower blocks, and this is what helps give it some support and some contact space for the glue. I'm just fitting everything together to see kind of where I want the spacing to look and how it looks, and you can kind of see exactly where that dial would go, and I decide that works. Now this part you can kind of use your imagination or creativity, but you need to come up with something to help lift up the portion of the scale that your items would sit on. So I had a little wood square. You could use a plunger handle from Dollar Tree. I just have a leftover piece from a dowel. You could use tumbling tower blocks to do this. So many different options, but just something to help prop up this top portion of the scale, to give my little dowel a little bit of security and a little bit more contact surface with the plate that's sitting on the top. I glue a couple of tumbling tower blocks with some wood glue to it just to kind of give a little bit of stability. If I had it to do over again, I would probably go up through the pencil holder and glue it to that and drill up through it with like a screw to give it a little bit even more stability, or drill down from that. Like somehow I would have drilled into this particular piece rather than the way I did it. It's fine. It's sturdy. It's going to hold. But especially if you're going to resell this, I probably would do that. But if you're just making this for yourself, and I mean, really, it would hold fine. I just am giving you a little bit of a different option there. Even some tumbling tower blocks, making a cute like X or something, I think would give a little bit more stability to it as well. But I'm just going to glue this top piece onto that pencil holder once I have it glued down. And then I tried to find the heaviest thing I could to stack and balance on this to help get that wood glue to hold and to dry with a really firm contact. So I was able to stack this bunch of plates on there. I mean, there's several plates there. It was heavy. So now I printed off, just getting on Google, I found some free scale dial images. So you just go to Google search and type in scale face printable, and this is what came up. And there was a couple different options. And then I just printed them out. I sized them in Canva to the size of my circle. And then I'm just using a glue stick here to get this scale face adhered. So just a liberal amount of glue, and then I will place that on. Right here, I'm just making sure that I get it positioned correctly and it's not going to be like crooked or anything. So I leaned my scale face up against the scale. Now I will put the colors of spray paint that I used in the description, but this is called, I believe it's Leafy Green. That is by Rust-Oleum. It is a beautiful color. It reminds me, it's not quite an avocado green, but very reminiscent of that green color they used back in the industrial era with all of the different scales. Not quite like tractor green, but a really good in between. And I've loved it for my projects this spring. But I believe it's called Leafy Green and it's by Rust-Oleum. And again, I'll leave that in my description box for you. Now I just kind of sanded off any excess paper that went over the edge on my scale. And then since it is paper and may have that white edge, I'm just going around with my Sharpie to cover up any white that's showing so it blends seamlessly into the scale circle there, into that circle, so it all looks like it was meant to be like this. I've become a fan of using my heat press now that I have one, just to give a little bit of an extra way to adhere this. And I do love the bond that comes with this. It helps get any wrinkles or anything out. That's totally optional. I just had my heat press heated up, so I thought I would try it. And I'm putting some Mod Podge on here. This is matte Mod Podge, but you could use gloss or satin. It doesn't matter, just as kind of the finish you want, but you're just going to seal off that scale face. And then using some Gorilla Glue. You could even use hot glue to do this portion here. I was just trying to not have the extra thick hot glue, but I just put that on the edge of my Jenga blocks or the tumbling tower blocks, and that's what's going to glue to my pencil holder there to get that scale face glued on. Now you don't have to go overboard with distressing, but I definitely feel like this needs a little bit of a black around even just the edges. You can do the lightest touch, just something to give some definition to the edges. It's just kind of all stark, one color, one dimensional. So I do a little bit of distressing after I do the edges, but I definitely feel like something needs to be done on this edges to give it a little bit more dimension and a little bit more embellishing. I kind of was trying to mimic what it would look like if the scale had been used for years. So on the top of it, I feel like items would have been placed on a scale and drug off. So I felt like it would have been a little bit worn out looking on the top of there. Maybe the paint had faded or chipped on that. And then all around the detail of the different edges where that kind of scroll work is on that base piece, I pay attention there, just kind of all over. Again, it's kind of just a matter of personal preference on this, but I would definitely, bare minimum, do the edges. I'm thinking that it looks pretty good there. You can kind of see all around, all different angles there. But here's when it's styled. Is this not the cutest thing? I love how this turned out. And I feel like this is so sturdy. It's not made out of like plastic pieces that I've seen some of the other faux scales made out of. I really feel like this is something that would last for years. To me, it looks like something I would have found like at the back of my grandma's kitchen cabinet that maybe she had used to weigh her different things in her kitchen, like used as a meat scale or something. I don't know, but I just really feel like this is such a great addition for a farmhouse kitchen to have something really cute displayed. It's definitely a different take on a riser. I would really love to know what you guys think of this one. If you have a stash or pick up these little pallets from Dollar Tree's crafting area and wonder what to do with them, I have the best DIY for you here. This is by far my favorite Dollar Tree DIY ever. So I am using 9 of these and I'm going to make a tray with them. So I'm just using a combination of wood glue and super glue, just the super glue and wood glue I got from Dollar Tree. And I'm just kind of alternating. The super glue gives it more of a like quick hold, if that makes sense here, while it lets the wood glue dry. So that's why I decided to use that. I don't love using hot glue in instances like this where I need the pieces to fit together tight, because I feel like sometimes the hot glue will dry in between and they'll kind of be like a space or something. So I'm just using these and I glue 3 together end to end, and then I do that for each of my 3 rows. So that will take care of all 9 of my little pallets here. And so as you can see, I have all 3 rows done here. And then I'm just using to kind of space my wood glue out there and kind of fill in the gaps with the super glue. And I will glue these 3 rows together using the same method here. To get these to fit together very securely, I am using some clamps. You can sit and hold them for that super glue to dry, but I found that the clamps worked the best. These 4 wooden signs are from Dollar Tree also, and I'm using them for the edges of our tray. And I'm just showing you here that this bottom is very secure. It is not going to fall apart. So now I just need to measure the edges so I know exactly where to mark on all of my signs to cut. Now you can use a handsaw or a miter saw, whatever you use to cut. And then I did drill a couple of holes in these. And as you can see, I ended up having to use a little bit of spackling because it's like a compressed wood. It's not like solid wood, if that makes sense. And so it kind of tore a little bit when my drill went through. So just a little spackling over that. Now I just use my super glue and my wood glue to glue those sides down first. And then I am going to glue these other edges, the front and back in. And if you saw me there, I made sure to put super glues on the edge of those pieces as well as the bottom part, so that way all of my surfaces that are touching are well glued together. Now at first I was just going to do one base coat of chalk paint because all of those signs are different colors, and I was kind of using this as a primer coat, and then I was going to spray paint it. I ended up just doing the whole thing with chalk paint in my studio, and I really do like how it turned out. But just know that you have to go in between each of these palettes with a little detail brush to make sure that those are all painted in between. So it takes a little bit of love and effort and time here. Spray paint may do a little bit quicker of a job for you, but I'm just letting you know how it was. But I'm so pleased with how this came out. I'm so happy that I did take the time to do this. So just that little detail brush in between each of those. Now I do decide to distress mine because you guys know I love that. That is totally my style. And when I've seen these in the store, they have had kind of that distressed finish. So I'm just using some antiquing wax on a chip brush. I will dip my antiquing wax in, and then I will wipe it off a little bit on a paper towel and then just lightly brush over the areas there. So I did the inside of my tray first, and then I go through on all of the edges and make sure that they're well covered as well. You just want to make sure that if you're doing a distressing finish like this, you want to make sure all of the areas are covered. So the inside of the tray, the outsides of the tray, outside sides, if that makes sense here. And then I kind of go along the edges like I'm doing right here. I feel that that gives a little bit of definition to the edges as well and really helps it to look really good. And I just love how it turns out. Now I'm using a little bit of the rope from Dollar Tree, and I am just going to put a little painter's tape on the edge so I can feed it through where I drilled my holes. If you didn't want to drill holes on here, you could easily super glue some like door handles or something onto the edge of this. If you don't have like the tools or don't feel comfortable using a drill or anything like that, just go to the craft store or hardware store and find a couple of drawer pulls and just use some super glue on the sides. Would work easily as well. But I just tie the rope in knots on either end there and then just pull it tight against, as you saw, I pulled it through to help that knot get really tight, and then just cut off the excess. And then I just repeat the same process on the other side. After I got my handles on and picked this tray up, I was instantly in love. I think this is going to be so fun to style. I love how this turns out. I think that it is such a solid piece, you guys. It's not flimsy at all. And I've seen these in different craft stores. I mean, look how cute it is standing up like this. Like, I just think it is so cute. But I've seen these in craft stores go for like lots more than it cost me to make this. And it took a little bit of time, but it is a piece that is going to be a staple for me for years to come. And I am so excited to get to style it in different ways and come up with different places to put it. I would love to know down in the comments what you guys think of this one and if this is something that you would attempt. I really loved this tin sign when I saw it, and it was the right price at $2, and it had this beautiful texture all around the edge of it, and so I thought I can really work with this. So I'm just going to use my heat tool to remove all of the stickers from the back here and give a nice clean surface to work on. And I'm spraying it down to get it all clean, all that dust and grime wiped away here, and starting with a nice clean slate that we want to do. My original intent with this sign was to paint it all completely white and then use some different colors to kind of make that texture on the edges pop. However, when I got to this point and kind of started seeing how the dry brushing looked on that tin, I was like, ooh, I really want to have that be what it looks like. So I'm just going to wipe the paint back and start completely over. As I'm wiping the paint, it's drying. So I'm just going to spray a little bit of my mister on there, and that's just going to help dampen the paint. So it's easy for me to wipe off. So just a wet paper towel or a wet wipe is going to help get that paint off of there. And then to protect that tin so I don't spill over with any of the paint, I'm just putting some painter's tape to give some nice crisp, clean edges. And it takes about 2 to 3 coats of chalk paint to cover that middle design there. And because I don't want to see that at all, I want to kind of have this be its own sign and not see any of that. I mean, the sign was beautiful the way it was, but it's just not what I'm going for. So now I put a little antiquing wax on a paper towel here, or just a towelette or something, and I want to age this color of paint here. I want it to look like it's been around for a very long time. So I'm just kind of smearing some antiquing wax on this. You create a lot of texture when you're using the chalk paint with brush strokes or whatnot. And so this is what's fun about using chalk paint, is it can go to all of that antiquing wax can go into all of the different texture that you created. So it really is fun to play around with different types of waxes to see the different types of finishes you get on different colors. So I'm just rubbing this all around here and kind of going back and forth to dip it in some more wax on here. Now I don't leave it this heavy, so I'll show you how I rectify that, because it does look pretty heavy at this point. So I'm spraying my mister on here, and this is just going to add a little bit of water on there, and I will come in and just kind of wipe it back. And this is going to take away some of the top layer that hasn't fallen down into all of the texture. And so that way you still get the antiqued wax look, but it's not as dark, it's not as heavy. I'm using that same towel that I used to put the antiquing wax on. I'm using it kind of like a stamp to add a little bit of extra texture, a little bit of extra aging, distressing on there. Completely optional, but I do like the way that it turns out. Now I have these stencils from Essential Stencils. There's a couple of them in this package here that say, you know, like market or antiques. And I ultimately decided on one that says vintage, just because I love this antique one, but I didn't love all of the detail on it. So I just kind of thought this one that said vintage was perfect. So I'm just using my ruler to kind of make sure that I get it as centered as I can here. And then I just place a little bit of painter's tape on the sides to hold that into place. Now I'm going to use some elephant chalk paint with a stencil brush. These stencil brushes also came from Essential Stencils, so if you do happen to get some stencils from them, pick up their brushes, because they are so much better than the cheap Dollar Tree brushes, and they're not super expensive either, and they last, if you take care of them, they're going to last a very long time. But I'm just using a up and down pouncing motion as well as a swirling motion, and I let the first layer dry, and I actually go back in a second time because I wanted that vintage to really, the words to really pop, or the letters to really pop on there. So that's why I decided to go over it twice to give a nice thick coat to it. It's always fun to peel back your stencil and reveal your design. I just think this turns out so beautiful. Their stencils are amazing, so I highly recommend checking them out if you like to do stenciling or rub-on transfers at all. So now I'm just going to go over the letters here with just a little bit of paint. This is just the paint that was left over in my brush from painting the sign, to go over the letters to kind of make them look not so crisp and clear. It just adds a little bit of weathering to them, I would say, maybe even more than distressing. And then I'm going to just peel back all of this painter's tape to reveal the edge of my sign. to help this beautiful texture shine through on the edge of this. This is just a little bit of paint. All I've done is just dip it in a little bit of white paint, brushed most of it off, and then I'm just coming over all of the edges here, you can see, and just hitting all of it, just hits all those high points of that texture and that detail to help that pop. And I really, really love how this turns out. This has got such a beautiful design on that edge, and where it was left the color that it was, like you couldn't really even see all of that detail. So I just am taking my towel and a little bit of antiquing wax. All this is doing is it's just aging the paint that's on there a little bit, and it's brushing back some to kind of help that natural brown color kind of reveal itself as well. I think this turns out so beautiful. I can just imagine this in some cute little old time shop or something, or just something that a little storefront might have, saying that they have vintage items. This would even be really so beautiful in a little powder room or something. I love this. Where would you guys put this in your house? I just think this turns out so beautiful, and I love that my vision kind of changed as I went along with it. Instead of painting the entire sign, I had that idea to showcase that edge, and I think I'm so grateful that I made that choice because that edge looks so beautiful. I am so excited about this project. I know I say that about a lot of them, but you guys, seriously, this is one of my all-time favorite projects. So I'm making a lantern. So I just decided how tall I wanted my lantern to be, and I'm taking, we have like these long slats of wood here. So I am cutting it down into 18 inches, and I make 4 pieces in that 18-inch cut. Now, you wouldn't have to do yours this tall if you wanted to do it, 12 inches, 10 inches, 30 inches, however tall you want yours is how tall you're going to cut these pieces. So I just take my first piece, I cut it to 18 inches. I like to take my next piece, use it as a template as where to cut the next piece. You could easily measure out each piece, which is probably what my husband would tell me to do, is measure it rather than use a template, but whatever works for you. Again, that's why I love this farmhouse rustic style, is it's rustic. It doesn't have to be super exact. I mean, it needs to be exact enough for things to be able to put together, but I think you guys get what I'm saying here. So I just cut 4 of those pieces out at 18 inches long. So I just brushed off my wood. The barn wood has a texture to it that picks up a lot of like sawdust or different things. So I'm just cleaning it off before I really start working with each individual piece. And then I'm taking just a Clorox wipe container to trace a little bit of a circle. I'm wanting to do like an arch shape on this. And so I just trace that little like half circle there. You could trace the whole circle and then use a straight edge to do a line down. So I'll show you in a moment what that looks like, but you can really, if you even just wanted to cut a simple rectangle out, you could do that. I just like the arch look, but you can see how that arch is kind of on there, and it goes all the way down to the end there, and then it squares off. So now we're going to use our jigsaw to cut this shape out. So I'm just going to clamp my wood so that way it's nice and secure so I can drill my pilot hole. The reason that you drill a pilot hole is you have to have something for your jigsaw blade to fit through. Now I'm just showing you how easy the jigsaw is. There's a little trigger on there, and that's what makes it go. You can do it as fast or as slow as you want. I'm encouraging you to not let this intimidate you, because honestly, these projects are so simple, and once you do it like your first project with your jigsaw, you're going to go, oh my gosh, okay, that was really easy and really fun, and your mind starts just reeling with all these different ideas of things to make. But I am just using this to cut out this shape, and I'll do this on all 4 pieces. And again, you can go as slow as you want, you can have it go as fast as you need it to, but it's not going to feel like you're out of control. And so you'll use that pilot hole, and you kind of have to curve your way around to get onto your line that you've traced, and then you'll just kind of go back over different ways for the lines. I hope that's making sense and you can see what I'm doing, but see how I use that pilot hole to guide my blade around so I could get that arch there? That's what I'm talking about there. So now I just clamp this so I can get to the other side of it. So I will just slide my blade into one of the cuts that I've already made and then just continue on. When you get to a corner, because you can't do like a 90-degree cut, you kind of have to back up a little bit. You'll stop your blade, back up a little bit, and kind of curve it around to get that next corner. So you can see how I back that up, and I'll curve it around to get on that next line, and then I'll come back and get from the other direction, and it will cut that corner out. I hope that makes sense to you. I just made a window in one of my videos, like a Gothic window. I will leave a link to that down in my description box so you can kind of see that too. I give a little bit more detail on using my jigsaw there. Now that I cut my first one out, I just use that as a template to draw a template on the rest of my 3 pieces for those cut out. So I'm going to cut this out on all 4 pieces. So I just trace, and that barnwood is pretty dark, so I have to trace pretty hard so you can see it, but you can see that line there. I'll just do the same thing with the next 4 pieces, just cutting each of those out. So I just want to show you how easy it is to go around this curve here. You just want to switch places on your jigsaw so you have control of it with your correct hand and everything. And you can see you just kind of slowly go right around that. And that was sped up, guys. So I mean, I'm doing this fairly slow. Now, when you get your pieces cut out, you're going to look at those edges and go, this does not look very pretty. At this point, I was a little discouraged, but I thought I'm just going to keep going. And so pull your sander out and sand those edges. You're kind of going to round those edges out, sand both sides, every raw edge, and it's going to soften it and it's going to make it look so much better. Kind of think like it's going to look like it's carved out of wood. So I did glue all the pieces together, and just in the same way that I'm gluing the base on here, but I just took each of those sides and glued them to the other side there, and then I just glued the base on. I just used wood glue. I didn't use any nails or anything like that. And now I'm just taking some antiquing wax and I am just kind of using my finger. Again, this is just because I have that barnwood that has that finish, and when you cut the raw edge, it's very stark difference. And so I just took some antiquing wax and went over it, went over all of the edges, the very top of it where those edges are exposed, I do it there as well. So you could even, if you're just cutting this out of like a regular piece of MDF board, just paint it whatever color you wanted to. That would be super easy. Just use some spray paint and that would be super quick as well. You guys, oh my gosh, I can't believe I made this. Like this has easily got to be like the top 3 of projects I've ever made. I absolutely love this. And you know what the hardest part is, you guys, is getting over that fear of using power tools. I promise you, once you do a jigsaw project your first time, your world is going to completely change. You're going to love it. It is so easy, I promise you. Please let me know what you think of this lantern down in the description box. I would love to know your thoughts on this. I love a good tag in my decor, and it's so fun to make them over. Now, these are just several different options. Some are Hobby Lobby clearance, some are Dollar General, some are Dollar Tree. This one was thrifted from my local thrift store, and it's actually the one that I'm going to use. I love the shape of it, and I just think it's going to be really, really cute. But you have a lot of options when it comes to tags. You can find the shape anywhere. You could even cut your own out. Now mine had this adorable little gnome that was more for like fall or Halloween time on it. I carefully took him off because maybe I can use him in something else, I don't know. But I definitely want to use this little circular like washer shape on it. Now it was pretty grungy, so I had to kind of scrub it and clean it and sand it all down. And I wanted to find a design to put on here. So I have these little labels that I purchased off of Etsy last year. I made my mom some dish towels for her kitchen with them on. And I really thought it would be cute to do one of those. And I found a darling one with some oranges and a cute little bird on there. And I just feel like bringing birds into my spring decor are a way that I can really keep that spring feel. Now I just taped some tissue paper down to a regular piece of printer paper. I put this through my inkjet printer with the design. I had measured it so I knew how big I needed to make it in my software, and I'm just going to cut it down, all of the excess edges off of it. Now I took a little piece of cardstock or just like a little packaging that I cut out to be the exact same shape as my design because I want to put some stamps down, but I don't want the stamps to show behind my design. So I'll kind of show you what I'm doing here. I'm just going to take, you can see my blank square there. This is kind of like a mask or a shield. And I'm just taping it down with some Scotch tape, and I'm going to put some stamped designs around here. So that way when I take off that square piece, it's going to be completely like blank in that area. If that doesn't make any sense, just keep watching. I promise you'll see exactly what I'm doing. So I remove my stamp here, and just be careful when you're using stamps and you have a mask or shield like this that you're making sure to push down really well on the area right around the edge of your mask. That way you can get your stamp design right up to the edge. So I'm using a couple of different bird shapes and a couple of different floral shapes on here. And I just go around, and there's no rhyme or reason to this. I'm just seeing where there's an open space, where it looks good, using like half a little bit of a design on a corner or an edge. I wanted this to almost look like toile or a stencil or something, just kind of a fun little background. These bird stamps came from Dollar Tree, and they're some of my favorite. I absolutely love them. You can see I will use the little stamping block with some of them. Some of them I just do with my hand. Now I wanted this to be a little bit faded because that black ink is a little harsh. So after the ink is completely dry, I just sand a little bit of it with my fingernail file. Now this is just a little finger dauber that I picked up at Hobby Lobby with some antiquing wax. I'm going to go around the edge here. The edge has been sanded, and so it really soaks in this antiquing wax, giving it a little bit of definition. I made sure to do the sides as well because I think eventually I'll put another design on the back of this so it could be a dual purpose DIY, but I just wanted to make sure that from the side angles that you saw it was all cohesive. Now to get my tissue paper design down, I'm just putting some Mod Podge down in that blank area, and then I will let that completely dry. Now while the Mod Podge is drying, I'm just going to put a little bit of antiquing wax on that little washer. I think that is such a fun element to have. If you don't have like a little wood cutout one like I have, an actual washer I think would be really cute on there. Now I'm going to set my design down over that square that's completely blank because this tissue paper is really thin. So if I had put that stamp all over, it would have really kind of muddled up that design there. So I just wanted to make sure that was totally blank behind that. Now I'm putting some parchment paper over that tissue paper and just using my mini press to reactivate that Mod Podge. And that's going to get your design on there beautifully, no wrinkles or anything. To seal it all in, I'll just go over with a little bit of Mod Podge and just lightly going over, making sure that this is sealing my ink in, as well as covering and sealing in that tissue paper. Just using a little bit of hot glue, I'll go ahead and attach that washer right over the hole. Now I have some thicker twine here. I really like the look of the thicker twine with this thicker chunky tag. I felt like it looked really nice with that. I also thought maybe a couple of beads might look nice on it. So since it was thicker twine, I stuck some needle nose pliers inside of my beads and kind of just pounded them a little bit. That way I could make sure that I had an opening big enough that I could fit that twine through there. And I did have to use my pliers to kind of pull it through. It took a little bit of time to get this, but I really think it was worth it. I think those beads really do make this look so cute. It's the little touches that make things look so nice and upscaled. I'm just tying a knot in the top here, making sure that it's really tight, and then I'll just cut my edges down. I always take my fingernail and kind of break apart those edges so it doesn't look so crisp and clean. It looks like it's been around for a minute or two. Here's the tag all complete. I think this is such a perfect piece of decor. I think it is very springtime, but it is also something that could stay out all year long. But I really feel like on a tiered tray or on a shelf as a shelf sitter would be so cute and such a fun piece of decor. Even making items like this to sell, I think these would be good sellers. I just really think this turned out so pretty and elegant. What do you guys think of this? Did you guys like how it turned out? You'll have to let me know down in the comments if you like decorating with tags or not. I think they're so fun and such a little versatility that you have to make them for different seasons and different times. I just really love them. I absolutely love to make different risers, and I found this sign at Hobby Lobby. You can use any sign from Dollar Tree, even some scrap wood, but you can see here I paid about $5 for it. It was part of the spring clearance, and it does have this raised paint on it to kind of give it some texture or anything. Now, I'm not going to want that on my riser, so we'll deal with that in just a moment. But then I wanted to try something new for the legs. They had these like thread spools. These were just over in their wood pile section where all of their wood crafts were. So all I'm going to do is take a putty knife. You could just immediately go to a sander if you wanted to do that. I just had my putty knife handy, and so I thought I would try and scrape this paint off this way, and it actually works pretty good. I do still end up sanding it, so it just kind of depends on what you would want to do, but I'm just showing you how you would kind of turn an everyday sign that you might already have in your stash or something like this. Don't let it stop you from using it or repurposing it. So as you can see, that paint just scrapes right off of there, so I can make it all flush because I am going to want to set things on here. Now I'm just taking a sanding block and I'm going over. This is just to make it really smooth so that way you can have a smooth surface. You can see all of the paint dust that you get on there, so you want to wipe it off pretty good. It does kind of make a little bit of a mess. Now I'm just taking some black chalk paint to go over this. I go over just with one coat. I had some of these sponge rollers left over from a crafting night that I did with some friends. They weren't the biggest fans of these. I thought I would try it. It worked all right. I wouldn't like run out to specifically get these for any projects, but I had it in my stash. I thought I would try it. I know some people are really big fans of them though. So now for the feet, I do the same thing, just a coat of black chalk paint on all of the feet here just to make sure that they're going to look cohesive here, and just go around them. I used kind of a dowel there to help me get around each of the feet to make it a little bit easier. Now I know everything comes full circle, and I've seen a lot of crafters start using this crackle medium. This is Folk Arts brand. There's several different type. I had used this like 15, 20 years ago. It was kind of like all the rage, and I think it's, like I said, everything comes full circle, so it's kind of coming back in to try this type of distressing. Now I love to try different things on here, kind of change it up a little bit, show you all different techniques, so that's why I'm showing this to you. And it was kind of fun trying this process again. So you paint your base coat on whatever you want the crackle color to show through, and then you use your crackle medium. You can get it in a spray form, you can get it in this liquid form like I have, and you're just going to go over your entire piece. You do want to make sure that this crackle medium dries for the time that it says. So on mine it said about an hour, so I definitely let it sit for that time. Then you take your top color that you're going to use for your actual color. In my case, this is a riser. I wanted my riser to be white with the black distressing coming through. And when you're painting this on, you want to work quickly, and you want to make sure that you do not disturb the paint that you've already put down. So you're not going to go over areas that you've already placed your paint down, because it will disturb the process. And you can kind of see in that first area that I worked that the crackle is already starting to take effect and the reaction is starting to happen. Basically, as your paint dries, the crackle medium makes your paint kind of shrink, and so what happens is it starts to crackle, and you see that background of the contrasting color come through. Now there are so many fun ways and techniques that you can do with this method of different colors you can play around with. It is definitely fun, and I was happy to kind of see it come back, because it's been a long time since I've done this method, and I thought it was a lot of fun. You can see here that crackling, how it took effect, and I think it looks great, very chippy and very fun. So I did the same thing. I had put that medium on the feet and then did the same thing on those. Now on the back of my sign, it had these little D-rings on there. So I just removed those so I can place my feet on. And I'm just going to use a combination of wood glue and hot glue. The hot glue is just going to work as a clamp. It is totally fine to use the two glues together. There's not going to be any reaction that happens that's going to cause any problems. And so don't feel, just leave a little space of the blank wood for the hot glue to adhere to, so that way you can definitely get that bond and that clamping process can happen. And I just kind of used my finger up against the edge that was on the back of that sign there to help get it level. And look at what a cute riser this is. I mean, even with some scrap wood, this would be a beautiful project to make. I loved that it was just a sign. I just had to paint it and glue some feet onto it to make a simple riser. This is something I can use all year long. This summer, I'm going to use this out on my porch as a cute little accent piece. If you're like me and have quite a few of these little house shapes from Dollar Tree and are trying to come up with different DIYs to do with them, here's a unique take on one. So this is from the fairy garden section at Hobby Lobby. It says $3.99 on there. Get it when it's 40% off, and we're only just using maybe like 6 inches of it. It's very long, as you can see. I got it because I thought it would be kind of fun to use in some tiered tray projects or something that you might just need a little picket fence for. But I'm just using my wire snippers just to kind of snip that. The wires are very thin. It's very easy to cut through. And then I'm just going to use some E6000 and hot glue because I really want firm bond on this, and so I'm just using the both of them. And I'm just putting them on one of those little pickets there, and then you'll kind of see I place it towards the bottom. And kind of, you want it definitely flush with the bottom though, because you don't want this to pull it forward since we're adding weight onto it. So you want to make sure that the bottom of your fence matches up with the bottom of the house. And I'm just holding that until that hot glue takes that immediate hold. And while I'm doing that, I'm just one-handedly trying to put some hot glue and some E6000 on the other picket. And I'll just do the same thing on the other side. I bend it in so that way it's gluing it onto there. And then you have this cute little picket fence on this house. Now I wanted to make it like a birdhouse, so I'm just taking one of my sponge tools from Dollar Tree. I put it in some black paint, and I'm just doing a couple test runs with it here on some paper to make sure it's making a good size circle. I don't want to like excess amount of glue on there or anything. So I'm just kind of going for it. You can kind of see I decided I want a little more paint, and I just kind of clean it off there and make sure that it's making a good circle. And then you just go for it. You just pick a spot, put it down, kind of twist it back and forth to get that really good circle shape. This is definitely something if you wanted it to look like a true birdhouse that you could drill the hole through there. You can hand put it on there. You could cut something out with your Cricut, however you want to get that on there, but it definitely makes it look like a little birdhouse now. So I'm just going around the edge of all of the edges here with the remainder of that black paint. This is just adding a little more detail to it, kind of making those different little edges stick out a little bit more, kind of just a little bit more embellishment there, which I really do like how it ends up looking on that. So here's our cute little house. It's all coming together. I think it's just looking so cute, but I really want there to be some plants in where this fence is. So I'm just putting a little bit of styrofoam just to kind of help hold what I'm going to put in there. So I just glue that down with some hot glue. And then comes the fun part of getting whatever little scraps of plants that you have, or if you have a sprig or something that you want to use, a pick from Dollar Tree. This is just some leftover boxwood that I have from Walmart. I love this stuff. I use it in a lot of projects, so I always have a bunch of this on hand. But this is just one that I already taken a bunch of pieces off of. I'm just kind of taking some smaller pieces of it and using some hot glue to get it stuck to that styrofoam piece. And that styrofoam is kind of just like a filler, so that way we don't have to put so much stuff in there, so it's kind of taking up some space. But this is where it comes in really good handy here, is I'm just putting some glue on the bottom, and I'm going to put some Spanish moss in there. So that's going to camouflage that styrofoam under there, and it's also going to add a different texture in there. I just think it looks really cute, but I do pay attention to getting it kind of slid all around. I use my little popsicle stick or the little tools I have there just to kind of slide it from the top of the fence and the bottom of the fence to get it all the way around your little block of styrofoam. And honestly, if you wanted to put the styrofoam down first and kind of put the Spanish moss around it and then do your fence, I think you'd be okay. This was just I was just kind of doing it as I went along. So this is kind of the order that I did it in, but I think that would be okay. You definitely would just want to glue your plants in last. And then I have this cute little bird that I had made in one of my spring videos last year. So I just thought it was super cute. So I'm just putting a little dot of glue on there to kind of bring home the fact that this is a little birdhouse. This is his home, and he has like the best lawn on the block, I tell you. I think it looks really cute, and it's just kind of something fun and different to do with these little birdhouse shapes. I mean, you could embellish this in any different way, so hopefully you have fun when you make yours, but I just thought that little bird there was so cute, and with that little hole that we put on that center piece of the slat of wood there, it really does just drive home that it's a birdhouse. And he does have the cutest little yard. You could put in some little like flowers if you wanted. I mean, you could really just use your imagination or go as basic as you want. Either way, I think it's going to turn out really cute. What do you guys think of this one? For this project, you just need any type of sign blank. I love checking Hobby Lobby because I feel like I get the best deals there and like wonderful sized signs. So that's where I got this one from. I am trying to sand the letters off just by hand, and they are not budging. And I really wanted a natural wood look to this. So I take it out, and it is so hard to film one-handed while you're sanding something, but I'm just using like my big sander that's what I had to end up using to get those letters off of there. And then I just cut this image out on my Cricut, and I'm kind of making a stencil. And I got it from Silhouette's design studio, so I will go ahead and link that down, so if you wanted to find it there, you could, and then you can size it to whatever size your background is. But I just placed it down like a stencil, So I just reverse weeded it and then laid that down on my surface here. And then I am just pouncing with a little bit of paint up and down all over the stencil. Now you can kind of see at the top, my B didn't transfer the best. And then I have one of the words that didn't. So I'll go back in and redo those after I get everything else done. So I'm just going through and lightly pouncing, letting that paint dry, and then I will peel that up. And there are a couple of areas that I have to go in and just take the rest of that stencil up, like, you know, in the middle of my O's and everything like that. So you can kind of see there how that process is. And then I'm just doing the little word raw there because it didn't transfer, or the stencil didn't work the best. And I redid my cute little B at the top there, which I think is just absolutely darling. You can always try using water slide decal paper or using printing on tissue paper to do a sign like this. I am just going in and de-stressing it with some sand to kind of make all of the writing and the stencil look a little bit aged and blend in with that wood surface that I did, how it looks very distressed. I just think this turned out so cute. I love this sign. It's like the perfect distressing amount, and I love the wood finish on it as well. I think it turned out really cute. What do you guys think of this cute sign? For this project, I am using a couple of square dowels that you can get at Hobby Lobby. I'm showing you here some of these came from Home Depot, Lowe's, anywhere you can get them. And I will put all of my measurements and what I cut them to down in my description box. And so just keep that in mind that I will show you there all the different pieces that I had, but I will list them all out for you in the description box so you'll know exactly how to cut them and how many you need to do. Every once in a while, as a crafter, you make a project that you absolutely fall in love with and you're like, this is my favorite project ever. This one is right up there with all of my favorites. I love how this turns out. I'm making a cute little bench that I have seen kind of popping up in my Instagram feed that people have used kind of as a different style of riser or tiered tray type thing. And that's what I'm going to create. So I am taking these two pieces here and I am taking these little shorter pieces. It's really hard to kind of understand at this point right now what it's looking like or how it's working until I show you, and then you'll go, aha, so I promise. So I just kind of marked about 1.5 inches up from the base of those two blocks to glue my little short pieces to. Right now I'm making like the support for the chair, so you'll be able to tell in just a moment. And then on the other end, I'm just gluing those right up against the end. So just take note of how I'm doing this. It's kind of hard to explain where you'll see exactly what I mean here. So this is where once these have dried a little bit with my wood glue, you can kind of see here when I put them there, it's starting to kind of look like the sides of a chair or a bench. Hopefully that makes sense to you. And then I'm just going to glue these onto both sides. So it's going to look maybe like the number 6 or something like that here. That's the best way that I can kind of explain it there, or a B or something like that. And I just kind of use my clamps until it gets kind of a good hold there. And then I'm just gluing that other piece together. And then here they kind of stand up. So hopefully you can see now and you go, oh, okay, I totally get it, because this is where we are here. So this is really, I'm doing that little support beam between the two sides of our bench. This is what is going to hold them together besides the slats that will sit as the backrest and the seat rest on there. And so I'm just kind of eyeballing that into the center. This is very farmhouse. It doesn't have to be super exact. So don't worry. You can kind of, if you look at my height, I did this 12 inches high. And if you're like, I don't want it that tall, you don't have to do it that tall. And these are just paint sticks, the 5-gallon paint sticks from Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever you get your paint sticks. And I taped them all together to cut them. And you can just cut them with a miter box saw that you have, like a hand saw. You can have like I use my power miter saw that I have, and I'm cutting those down. I cut those down to 11 inches. Again, I will have all of my measurements listed down in the description box in case you want to recreate this. But I don't use any nails or anything. I just use hot glue and wood glue, and hot glue just kind of gives it that short-term hold, and that wood glue dries for that long-term hold. And guys, this is so sturdy, like it really is. And you can see that I left just a little bit of space between the slats on the backrest and the seat rest there. And then I am just taking some antiquing wax and I am going over this. Now at first I started doing this with a baby wipe, but after I had turned my camera off because you didn't want to see like 20 minutes of me staining this, I do end up getting a brush, and I will brush it all on and then wipe it off with the baby wipe. Since there's so much surface area to cover and in between the little slats and everything, that's what ended up working best for me. And you can stain this in whatever color you wanted to. I just used the antiquing wax from Waverly. To brighten it up a bit, I just dry brush a little bit, and by little I mean just the littlest amount of white chalk paint all over it, just to brighten it up. I just think that when you go along the edges and everything, it kind of gives a little bit of definition to it, and I personally really like the way that looks, so completely optional to what you like. And I just go around all of the edges here. Hopefully you can see by the pieces here that there's not a lot of base pieces. From start to finish, this took me less than 40 minutes, and that's with staining and everything and doing my wood cuts and everything. It was a very quick project. I love how it turns out, and I am so excited in the final reveal to show you how I styled it. I love this. This project, I was so nervous about how it would come out. So I did just buy one of these wood rounds at Home Depot. It was $11. And I want to give it, I saw one of these in, I can't even remember, it was some boutique store that I was in, and it looked like a wood round with wood and marble. And I thought, oh, I can probably recreate that. So I just stained the whole thing with the antiquing wax. And then I'm going to try foam marble. And I have never done this. You'll have to see if it turns out or not. But I have never painted foam marble. So I came up with the spacing that I wanted. So I used my tape, and I wanted my marble to be the length or the width of 3 strips of painter's tape. And then the wood I wanted to have be 2 strips. And then the sides of the wood are a little bit longer, but if that makes sense, you can kind of see what I'm doing here. I just match those edges up really good. I make sure that they're pressed down where the paint is going to touch, so that way it doesn't bleed through. And I left the back side of this blank because I wanted to, if it totally looked horrible, I could at least salvage it and have the back side of it be plain wood, so I could use, you know how they have these big cutting boards and different things, they use this like as a tray on your countertop, or or something. That's kind of what the look I was going for, what I wanted. So I do just go and I pounce that paint onto the edge of the painter's tape to form a seal there, and then I take the marble right up to the edge because I want it to look like it goes all the way through. And then my thought was, well, if this turns out, I can always go back and add it to the back side, but I just did it on the top for right now, like I said, because then I could turn it over if everything went wrong and just use it as a stained piece of wood. And I could always sand it down also if it doesn't turn out. So, but I go on each section where my marble is going to be, and I just pounce along that edge, and then it takes about 2 or 3 coats to get it really thick. So here we go. I'm using some elephant chalk paint, and I'm using just a little brush, and you just kind of spin. I'm spinning and I'm pulling down, okay, to kind of give it the veining look there. You can kind of see in the upper right hand corner, I had got a couple of samples of marble from Home Depot, like in their countertop section, to kind of use as inspiration. So I spray it. I have water and isopropyl alcohol that I'm using here. So I spray it and I go over it with my brush to kind of soften it. And I'm like, this looks horrible. Like, this is gonna be the biggest fail I've ever done. So I wipe that off, and well, I try to blot it because I think, oh, and I'm like, nope. So I wipe it off. So I'm gonna try down lower. So I spray it with some, this is the isopropyl alcohol with the black spray pump there that I spray on it, and try the same thing down here to see if that works any better instead of water. And I spray some more on it, and I keep dabbing, trying to soften that. And then I go in with my baby wipe and kind of, dab it. And I'm like, it looks a little bit better, kind of. And then I go in and darken the veining there. And then I just totally go blot that with my baby wipe there. So I'm taking you guys through the whole process so you can kind of see exactly what works, what doesn't. So, and then you just kind of pick where you want your veining to be. And I realize while doing this one right here, I realize it works better when it's a wet surface. And so, because I've sprayed so much of the alcohol on there. And so you just kind of spin your brush in your hand as you drag it to create those lines. And then I did not love going in with my big brush to kind of dab it, even though, now I did not look up any tutorials or anything. I have just seen a couple of things here and there, like in reels of people on Instagram of people doing this. And so I just kind of went off of what I had seen there and thought I can figure this out. So just wait and see the end to see if I really did figure it out. But yep, you can see me just going through here with the veins, and I am softening it on this one. But like I said, I don't know that using the brush to soften it was my most favorite method, so I don't know that I would do that. So, but I did find that working with a wet surface works better. So I feel like it's starting to look a little bit better, but I sprayed water and alcohol all over this section. You can see me doing there. And then I go in, and this is where you can start to see the veining almost like bleed, if you will. So you watch this here. See that bleeding that happens right there? I feel like that's what gives it the most natural look. And so this is where I start to think, okay, this could actually work. And so I just keep using it, and I go back and forth between my isopropyl alcohol and my water. And I don't know that there was a difference between the two, but I had started out using them both and it seemed to be working, so I just kept going back and forth. I know with nail art, like doing fingernail art, like the alcohol, it helps give you like that watercolor effect and stuff, and you use it a lot when you do nail art, and so that's why I thought to use it on this. So that's the alcohol that I just sprayed there, and then I go through, and I tried to keep the same way that my veining was going. So it looked like it was one piece of marble that was cut to fit in between the wood pieces, if that makes sense. So you can see these are all kind of going downwards and to the right. Okay, here we go. Moment of truth. So I'm peeling it off, and I'm like, okay, this is actually looking okay. So satisfying when you peel back paint and there's not any bleed through. So far so good. I'm loving. What are you guys thinking of this? Or do you think this is nuts that I tried this? So look, I love it. And I do go back in, and where my paint had pulled a little bit of the stain up, I just rub a little bit more stain on there just to kind of fill in those areas. But that was really it. And so you can kind of see those are my inspiration pieces. So here we go. What do you guys think of this? So I'm thinking of just using this either as a tray on my counter or like in my china hutch with dishes in front of it. But for my first attempt at marble, what do you guys think? Have you guys ever painted faux marble before? If you happen to have a rolling pin, or maybe a vintage rolling pin, I noticed at Vintage Market Days last time I was there was a lot of booths that had some really pretty antique rolling pins, but maybe you don't want to paint it, but you want to do something than just have it be a plain rolling pin. This is a really great idea here. Now, this is some fabric I picked up at Dollar Tree. I thought it was very perfect for a kitchen DIY. Kind of has like the farmer's market, the butcher. I just really thought it was perfect for this project. So I'm just putting a little slit in one edge of the fabric, and I'm going to tear this down. It tears pretty easily here, and the point of this is to have a really frayed edge. So I'm going to even kind of pull some extra little strings out and make sure that's a really like ratty-tatty frayed edge there. And that really gives that nice farmhouse aged look. And then I just kind of lay it up against my rolling pin, and you just decide how much of your rolling pin you want to have showing and how much fabric you want on there. I just kind of eyeballed that, and I just put a little slit in, and I'm going to tear this piece off and do the same thing with it, pulling away all of the extra threads and everything to give it a really frayed edge look. I love to have my mini heat press heated up when I'm working with fabric or ribbon, because it is so nice to be able to use this as an iron and get all of the wrinkles out. It really is a great tool to have. Now we need to make one more cut to our fabric here. So I'm just rolling the fabric around the rolling pin here, and I'm going to cut, leaving about an inch to overlap. And then the same process, I just tear this fabric and then I fray all of the edges. I'm going to use my Elmer's Purple School glue stick for this. It is non-toxic, so it is not going to harm your rolling pin in any way, either in residue or by adding harmful chemicals or anything into there. So I just placed that on my fabric. Now you could completely skip this step and just fold the fabric over on itself and not glue anything directly to the rolling pin. And I'm just going to take my heat press and iron this edge flat so it will lay flat on the rolling pin. And then I put my glue directly on the fabric here on this edge of the fabric, so that way when I fold it over, then I've got a nice edge that's sealed onto my rolling pin. Putting this edge down and you're pulling it kind of taut, you just want to pay attention to the line of the fabric and make sure that it stays as straight as possible so it doesn't look all ski-wampus or anything. And I do take my heat press and I go over this edge. This helps if there's any wrinkles or any creases or anything that happen. It smooths those out really well. Now you could leave your rolling pin like this, but this is the fun part for me, is embellishing it. I love how mine turns out. Yours may look completely different than this, so hopefully this just helps give you some fun ideas. I just take some of the thicker Walmart twine and I wrap that around 3 or 4 times and then tie it off in a knot. And I took a little sprig of the Walmart boxwood, as well as this little piece of lavender that came from this year's Dollar Tree spring bundle. And I just placed those under the knot there. And then to get them to stay, I take my hot glue, and you're just going to place the littlest amount of hot glue, just enough to keep those in place. This is going onto the fabric. It's not going to harm the rolling pin in any way. I had made this little beaded chain and I thought, oh, maybe do I want to put it on here? This is me trying to hold it up to decide if I decide to put it on or not. It really went back and forth on this. I do end up adding it and I really do like how it looks, but it took me a minute to kind of imagine what it looked like. But I just essentially tie this around the knot so it's on there. I take some smaller twine and I just wrap that around my finger, maybe 10 times or so to make a little finger bow. I'll just take another piece of twine and wrap that around the middle to make a little bow here and just tie that off, and just those loops are going to make a cute bow to put on here. I know bows aren't everybody's thing. I think it looks really cute on here. It needed something extra, and in my mind this was the perfect thing. So if you had a different idea, it would be fun to know what else you guys would try. So just a little bit of hot glue. I let that dry for a little bit before I place it down so the glue doesn't squirt out everywhere. And then I just kind of move my tassels or the tails of the bow there. I trim them up a little bit so they're not so crazy. And then here it is. Now, the fun thing about this is if you were to hang this, because it's got a hole in the handle, and kind of switch the direction of your bow, then those beads hang really cute if you were to display that like off of a hanging rod or something. I'll show you what that looks like, but I think this looks really cute. I think the florals on the one side and the beads on the other really do kind of balance each other out. Here's a look at what it looks like hanging. What a fun way to display this if you have a hook or a shelf somewhere that you could hang things from. And imagine if you were to do this for some different seasons. It would be really easy to change this out because we're not compromising that rolling pin in any way. But imagine like a Christmas rolling pin or fall or something. I just think what a fun way to bring an actual kitchen item in and use it as decor, especially if you have some vintage ones or a collection. Kind of a fun, unique way to display these. What do you guys think of this one?
They have these darling little plaques or little sign blanks at Dollar Tree, and then this is from Hobby Lobby in the wedding section. However, Dollar Tree sells little frames, so feel free to use whatever little vintage frame that you would like to, or vintage looking frame. Now I'm just removing the sticker from the back of this sign and I'm just sanding it down, and while I'm doing that, I figure I will sand the front of it. Mostly because when you pick up things from Dollar Tree, there can be scratches on them, or they can look pretty ununiform with how distressed they are. So I wanted to just kind of get out any blemishes. I wanted any distressing to be intentional and be what I put there. So I'm just going to go over all of this, the ridges, everything, and just kind of brighten this up and give it a really good uniform look. On this little frame here, I'm just going to remove the back completely because I'm not going to need it. I'm going to be gluing it onto this other sign blank that we have, and I'll just remove the pieces inside of it there because I don't need those. It's just like a little plastic film on the inside of it, not glass or anything. And then I'm just going to lightly brush over this with some white chalk paint here to kind of brighten it up so it has a good contrast to the back piece that I'm using, that wood piece, and I thought the white would be a really good contrast depending on what color your background is. You could easily do like a vintage metal look to this, would be really cute. But I'm just going over all of the sides. I have just a little bit of paint on my brush here and just going over all of those edges and details. It really picks that up, and I think it really gives it a nice look. Now I'll just give you a little peek at my creative process here. A lot of times when I'm wanting to use some scrapbook paper or something, I will try a few things, kind of set it up, see how it looks, see what I like. That galvanized metal paper I love, but it did not really pop well with the frame. And I do like the look of this leather paper, and I felt like the darker one was the best option, so that's what I end up going with. And then I just have some rub-on transfers from Dollar Tree. This is one they've had for a little while, and I've just kind of cut some of the little pieces out of this to put on here, and I just kind of haphazardly just make a collage of some of these vintage looking things. Now you could easily put an actual photo in here, a vintage photo of a family member. It would be absolutely beautiful. A drawing, anything. I mean, the possibilities are endless here. This is just something that I did to kind of go for this vintage farmhouse look. And I'm just using some hot glue around the back of the sign here, and I will just place this paper on here. You can see I place it down and then place the frame so I can center it how I want it centered there and see what I'm doing. Now I have this little key from Dollar Tree here, and at first I thought I was maybe going to put it on there, and then I thought no, it actually looks cuter off to the side, so this is where I'm going to end up gluing it, is right there, and I thought that looked really cute. Just another little element there, kind of adds that vintage tone. So I just use a little bit of hot glue and I just put that on the back of the key, and then I just place that back down kind of how I want it, make sure it gets a good firm hold there, and I just thought that was a really cute contrast to bring that wood tones to the front of the piece where it matches the tones on the back as well. Now I'm just using a tumbling tower block to glue onto the back of my little frame here. If you want to put a little bit of cardboard or poster board or something on the back, cardstock even, to give that a little bit more heftiness rather than just the paper there. My cardstock paper was pretty, or my scrapbook paper was pretty decent, so I felt that it held okay, but just know that you're feel welcome to put a little cardboard there if you want to kind of beef that up a little bit. And then I'm just spinning this around to kind of get it as straight as I can while that glue is still hot so I can manipulate the position of it there. Now, the frame itself looks absolutely darling on that back, but I thought it would be really fun to add a little bit of greenery. This is just the boxwood that comes from Walmart. I pulled off, I think I ended up using 6 pieces in total. I have 4 here, but then quickly decided I needed a little bit more. And I'm just putting a little bit of glue on that. And if you guys have watched my channel, you know I love to make 3D signs like this. And this one's a little different because I don't go around the entire edge of the frame. I'm just doing it on the diagonal. But I love popping out that frame or your centerpiece and giving a little bit of space, and then tucking some greenery in behind it. I think it really adds such a darling element. It gives it some texture. It's something unique and different that you don't see all of the time, but I really do think it looks really nice. So you can see here I'm just kind of struggling for a minute there to get this little piece in here. But I just glue all of those in behind and then hold them, and I do the same thing on the bottom to match it so they match on the diagonal. If you have a problem with any little hot glue like webbies or wispies or anything, I just use my heat gun to blast those. Be very careful with your boxwood that you don't melt it, but this gets rid of any of those little stringy hot glue things that we all absolutely hate as crafters. This is a great way to kind of get them just kind of melt away into thin air. But look at how beautiful this little sign looks. I just think this is adorable. And I feel like if you really did have like a vintage photo in here of somebody in your family or something, how beautiful would that be? How fun would it be to have a vintage picture in here of like your great grandma and give it to your mom or your grandma or something as a cherished keepsake? I think this turns out beautiful regardless of the picture that you put in the center there. I think that this is such a lovely way to display a cute little frame, and I think it has that really rustic and farmhouse touch. What do you guys think of this one? Are you a fan of this one? This project is a remake or a take on a table that I have made before. It is a tiered tray that is a potting, inspired by a potting table. It is one of my most popular DIYs, and I found these little pictures at Dollar Tree, and I thought they would be perfect because I've been looking for something to kind of simplify the process to make this table. Now, you could see the one was kind of falling apart there. I had to glue the sides together. These were the only two that I found in the Dollar Tree I was in that day. If you find these, grab them because they are perfect for this project. Now, I did remove the tin there, the little sign that said home. I believe the other one here says friends, it looks like. And you can hang on to those, use those for other projects if you want, trash them, whatever you want to do. But the glue did leave a little bit of residue behind, so I'm just sanding these. And this is just going to distress them, and it really brightens them up, and I love the finish that it gives. Painting them would always be an option as well, but you can see how bright these look. I love kind of the almost natural wood color that this gives. It's going to be perfect for our little potting table that we're going to make here. Now I'm trying to keep this as much of Dollar Tree products as I can. I'm using some of the tumbling tower blocks. I want these to be the feet of my table, but I want them to be thicker than just one tumbling tower block. So I'm going to take some wood glue and hot glue, and I'm going to make them thicker so that way I can have a thicker base on there. You want to make sure to get these as even as possible so your table doesn't wobble at all. And I had started out using the clamps and realized I really didn't need to do that. I could just glue them with the wood glue and the hot glue and press them together really tightly with my fingers, and that would give me the bond that I needed. I would just have to hold it for a few seconds. I get asked a lot about using hot glue and wood glue together, and they're great to use together. It does not compromise either of the glue, the way that it adheres. The hot glue actually works as a temporary clamp while that wood glue dries, so it's totally fine to use those two together. Now I want to have these have a very rustic finish. I want the two layers of my table to have that natural wood color, and I want my legs to contrast with a white color, and I will distress them with some antiquing wax as well. Again, you could paint this or this in any colors that you wanted. Now, where these are picture frames, you can see that I'm just removing that little sawtooth hanger on the back there. I just used some pliers rather than unscrewing it, and it worked great to get that off. And then you can see I'm just going in just very lightly dry brushing. So dry brushing is just getting your brush, putting a little bit of your paint or your wax on it. In this case, I'm using antiquing wax, and I wipe most of it off. So it's just very, very light as you brush it up and down. It's just going to give that little aged look. Where this is going for a potting shed type of vibe here for this table. Obviously, I want to look like it has been used. It's rustic. And so that's why I'm going heavy with my distressing on this. That's again, just totally optional. Just giving you some ideas of what you might like to do for your decor, but I feel like that very rustic look there really does add that farmhouse touch to it. Now I'm just using some hot glue to glue my Jenga blocks here, the tumbling tower blocks, as my feet to the table. Don't worry, I will come back in and remove that little barcode sticker off of there. At one point I realized that, I don't know, for some reason when you get in the zone and crafting, you don't even realize things like that until, minutes later you're going, oh, I can't believe I didn't do that. So now I'm just showing you that I cut some square dowels down, and you guys, I found some easels at Dollar Tree that would work perfect to use the legs off of that if you want to keep this all Dollar Tree. I cut mine to about 5.5 inches, rounded up to 6 inches. That would be fine. I was just trying to work with the length of the wood that I had. You could even go 5 inches. It just depends on how far apart you want your two levels, but I was just showing you that I did the 5.5 inches. Now I'm painting these to match those tumbling tower blocks. So I'll give each of these a coat of white paint. It takes about 2 coats, and then I will go back in with the antiquing wax here, as you can see, and I'm just distressing. I pay close attention to the edges of the dowels there because that's where you see that heavy antiquing wax come off of there, off of the brush onto the leg, and it really just makes it look dirty, which is what we're going for, right? It's a potting table, so we're going to go with it. And it just is that farmhouse look. And I really do love that chippy farmhouse style. These heat guns are absolutely fantastic to use with your putty knife to get those stickers off. You can see how easily those just pop right off of there. You just heat up that adhesive underneath those stickers. I just put my little putty knife there that I got from Dollar Tree, and it just comes right up. I did get this heat gun on Amazon. I'll link it below if you're interested in investing in one. I honestly didn't know how often I would use it because I always just used my hair dryer when I did crafting, but you guys, I use this in almost every single DIY. So if you're looking for something new to add to your crafting game, I would highly recommend one of those heat guns. So now I'm doing the same process with these square dowels as I did with our feet for the table, and I'm just using some hot glue. I just put a bunch of hot glue in the corners there, and then I placed those legs in, and that way I would get the bond that I needed to. Now, to have this glue to the top of our bottom layer, which you'll see what I mean here, I am using a little bit of wood glue with the hot glue to do this. The other table that I made, I did with hot glue. It has held up just great. So, I mean, this isn't going to get super heavy use. So I feel like the legs using just hot glue would be fine, but gluing it to that surface, this top layer to the second layer, I wanted a little bit more of a bond with that wood glue. So that's why I used a little bit of wood glue there. And you guys, look at how beautiful this table is. This is such a fun table. It's perfect. It's such a great and different take on a tiered tray. I get so many compliments on this table that I have. Like I said, this is a little bit of a smaller version of one that I made previous on my channel, but I get so many comments on this, and everybody just seems to love it because it's different than what you see everywhere. And I really think that it turned out beautiful, and you can use it all year long with all different seasons. I have been sitting on this birdhouse for the longest time. It sat in my stash, and you can see I paid like $3 and change for it. It was on clearance at this little cute farm store in our not our neighborhood, but in our town. And I love it, and had this beautiful lattice work on here. And I have this candlestick that I picked up at Hobby Lobby, and it kind of has like this really distressed look to it. And I thought it would be really cute to put on the bottom of the birdhouse and have that birdhouse sit elevated. But all of this lattice work, I want it to match the candlestick. So to do that, I'm just taking my emery board, and I'm going to it takes me about 5 to 10 minutes, maybe not even quite that long, but a little bit of time to sand all of these edges and kind of really have this beautiful lattice work on there. I guess, is this lattice work, scroll work? I'm not really sure. But anyway, whatever it is, it's beautiful, but I just wanted it to match that candlestick so it all looks cohesive together. And so you can kind of see, even on the surface, I'll kind of go on there and sand that paint away. You could even use, if you didn't want to sand, you could just get like a mineral color of paint and do the same effect with paint. I'm using a combination of hot glue and E6000. This is just going to give you that permanent hold with that E6000, and that hot glue is just going to work as that temporary bonding agent while that E6000 cures, so that way it's going to have that quick hold to it. You don't want to use just hot glue in case you were to place this outside, because then if you live in a really hot climate, it can melt the glue, and so you just make sure that you use both the E6000 and the hot glue on something like of this size here. Now, as I'm doing this and I'm centering this as best I can, I'm looking here going, okay, there's this rope on top of here. I don't know what to do with it because obviously it's not going to hang anymore. So I just took my pliers and I pulled it out, but then realized immediately like, oh, there's a hole in the top of the birdhouse now. So in my mind, well, I would have used wood filler if I would have had that. So that's probably what I would have suggested. But I took a little wooden bead and I put some twine in it, and I tied a knot at either end of it. So that way the twine fit down into the hole. So I'm just using some glue on that to get that set down in there. And then it's kind of got the little knot at the top to kind of finish off the look. I don't know, maybe it's the bird's chimney. I don't know. In my mind, it worked. So, but I really do think this turned out so cute. And I've been sitting on this birdhouse. It sat in my stash for almost 3 years. And I just didn't love the shape of it or how I just wanted to do something with it. And I really think this was the perfect thing to do with it. So hopefully you can use this technique with any other birdhouse shapes or things that you find. This is so fun because you really could leave this out all year long. It's not just a springtime item. What do you guys think of this one? This is a super easy and quick little thrift flip. I found this little winter Christmas candle stand at my local thrift store for $1, and I thought it would be perfect to kind of paint basic color. I'm just going to paint it white and make a cute little riser out of it. I love to use risers in my decor. I have a whole video that is dedicated to risers. I'll leave a link down below if you want to watch that. But I take this little round from Dollar Tree, and I am taking off this little word that says family here. It is a very thin, there's no way I could have saved it for another project. And then I took all of the paper off, and then I sanded
sanded this round down, and I sanded all of the edges to kind of soften them a little bit so it wasn't such like a harsh edge to it. And now I'm just taking some Mod Podge and putting this on the candle base there to help have the paint adhere to it. You could spray paint this. I was just out of spray paint, so I just decided to use chalk paint, and I just chalk painted them both in a basic white color here. So now I'm just going to use a combination of E6000 and hot glue to glue that round onto the base. I take my emery board and file the edges to give it a distressed look. I use a little mineral chalk paint, and then I go over it with some white to kind of dull it down a little bit so it's not super harsh. I love the stability of this piece, and I love that thick base with that round top on it. I think it's so cute. This will definitely get lots of use out of it. I'm always looking for different ways to do risers to raise things up high if I need a different level or something, and I think this will be perfect for that.
This item has been sitting in my thrift flip stash for some time now, and I thought this would be such a fun project. I wanted to make this little fleur-de-lis stand here look kind of like aged metal or old kind of metal. Hopefully I achieved that. You can kind of see it's been painted before. There are some drip marks on there. So I do clean this up really good, wipe it down really well. I also go in with some sandpaper. I sand anywhere that there are paint drips on it. Now I can tell that it does kind of have a little bit of a crackling look to it where it's kind of been aged already. And so I kind of thought that that would work to my advantage. I do decide to put some Mod Podge on here to give this some texture because where I saw so many drip marks from the paint before, I wanted to make sure that I had a good surface for my spray paint to adhere to. The trick to avoiding that when you're working on slick pieces like this, if you can sand them, that helps. And then also very light coats of spray paint. I just love using this hammered metal spray paint. This is Rust-Oleum. I've also used Krylon's brand before. It gives that texture that you saw on the lid there to your pieces, so it does look like that hammered metal. Just work in really light coats here so you can kind of see how I started there, and I just worked my way around the entire piece. I let it dry thoroughly in between coats, and it has this reaction that happens that gives it kind of that bubbled texture, that hammered metal look. Now I took it down into my studio after it dried because it was still a little bit shinier than I wanted. I did kind of want a little bit more of an aged look to it. So I'm just taking some antiquing wax. This is just a water-based antiquing wax. This is the kind you can get at your craft store or Walmart. And I'm going all over the entire piece, making sure to push it in all of those little nooks and crannies that this piece has so it would have that totally like aged old world look. I did wipe some of it off in areas that it was a little heavy on there, and then if there were any areas I wanted to go and darken back up, I just put a little bit more. But I am very happy with how this piece turns out. I think sitting like on my porch or in my home or anywhere, this is going to give a perfect old world French country look. I love this. This type of piece, if you were to buy this metal, would cost so much money, and it was perfect for a thrift flip. What do you guys think of this piece? This is a sign blank that you can get at Hobby Lobby. I buy them when they're on sale, and you can see here the price there. And I did buy it at 50% off, so make sure that when you're buying these pieces, you buy them when they're on sale. And I'm just going to cut off the little hanging tab there. And I also go in with my heat gun and remove the price tag. And then these little staples here that was keeping our little twine stapled to it, I just take some needle nose pliers and I remove those. A couple of them gave me a little bit of trouble, so I just used my little weeding tool to help get underneath those. But I just take those off and then sand it down so it gives it a very finished look. Now I'm going to make a tray out of this sign, and I'm going to use these little feet here. I get these at Hobby Lobby in their wood section. I believe these do go on sale too. It's $5 for the bag, so if you can get these on sale, do, but you've got enough, you can do a couple projects out of one bag. So I'm just going to paint them with some white chalk paint to match the original color of the sign, but you could also stain these and do like a two-tone look, or really you could paint the base of your sign and the feet whatever color you wanted to match your decor. I just love taking pieces like this and making them your own. I mean, to buy a riser like this, you're going to pay a lot more than you would making it in this instance if you buy all of these pieces on sale. Plus you get the satisfaction of knowing that you created something. So I'm just taking my emery board and I'm going to rough up these feet so that way it matches that really distressed, weathered look that the sign has there. So I just wanted it to look like it was a completely cohesive piece. So you can measure where you want to put these feet and mark them, or you can just kind of eyeball it like I did. I'm a big fan of that. So whatever works for your style. And I do use a combination of wood glue and with hot glue. So I just put a little bit of wood glue in the middle of each of these feet, and they're already cut off, so they have a flat surface that's going to glue to your surface there. And then I just put hot glue on the outside, and again, just do this with all 4 legs, and it is that simple to make this tray. I just love this. This is such a stunning piece that is going to take you through every single season. How beautiful is this with just some everyday farmhouse decor on here? But of course, we want to see what it looks like with the Christmas items that we just made.
I have these cute little seed pots. They're kind of what you use like when you're starting seeds in your house before you take them outside to plant. So perfect for springtime if you see these anywhere, like where you find your seeds or anything like that at your seed stores or wherever, greenhouses, pick some up because they're kind of fun to do some crafts with. So they have this beautiful texture to them, and so I'm, like a real natural feel. So I'm just taking a chip brush with some white paint, and I go over each of them to kind of bring out that texture so you can really see it there. And then I'm just going to take some styrofoam, and I'm just going to use my putty knife here to cut that. I find that is the easiest to cut it, and I'm just cutting 3 little areas there to stick down in each of the pots. I do kind of roll it on my table to give it a little rounded shape you can see in there so it fits in really nice. Now I'm going to take some cardboard. This is just off of, an Amazon box here, and I'm just going to trace each of these, well, just 3, not each of them, but I'm tracing 3 so that way I can cut 3 circles out. And I will use a screwdriver to kind of poke a hole in the middle of each of these. And what I'm doing here is I want a flat surface to be flush with the top of the pot. So, and you'll see why here because we're going to put some stuff on it. And so I just the nice thing with these pots is since it's kind of that natural material, like you can kind of manipulate it to fit those in. Now I'm just taking some white flowers that I have. This is something that was in my stash, and I want to say I either got it at Hobby Lobby or Walmart, but I mean definitely Dollar Tree has such beautiful florals. If you are anything like a crafter like myself, you probably have a good stash of florals already that you can pull from, but anything's going to look really cute doing this, and you can even change it up for different seasons if you wanted to. It would be really easy to pull out those flowers and stick something else in to change them. So now what I'm doing with that cardboard space is I'm just using some hot glue and some reindeer moss. And I just picked this reindeer moss up at Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to put a little bit of glue and then push down that reindeer moss all the way around each of these where that cardboard area that we cut out is. And I use a barbecue skewer to help me so that way I don't burn my fingers, and I can also get it pushed down in any like nooks and crannies, if you will, that it needs to be done. So you can kind of see here, I'll place down that little bit of reindeer moss and then just push it down with that barbecue skewer. I love how these turn out. I love the natural feel and the natural vibe that they're giving here. They're going to be beautiful in my home and definitely bring that touch of spring. Is this something that you guys would try, or do you like this? Let me know down in the comments. This piece is really simple and it doesn't take a whole lot of time to create, and it's really, really pretty. And I just have these pieces from Dollar Tree. So I'm showing you 5 pieces here. If you want to make a base out of like this leftover piece right here, that's totally optional. I just wanted to keep this under that $5 price point. And now that it's $1.25, not $1, we're working with 4 items, not 5. So I have 2 of the square pieces and 2 of the like picket fence or house looking pieces. These came from the crafter square section at Dollar Tree. They have them in this finish, and there's also like a white finish. You can also paint it to be any color that you would like. I'm going to leave mine this natural color today. Now I'm just taking my heat tool to help heat up the adhesive on the back of these price stickers that are on here, the little barcode stickers. It's just an easy way to remove these, to use like your little putty knife there or your fingernail and get under there, and then just be careful not to burn your fingers because I've done that a time or two. And so, but you're just heating that up and it just peels right off and it leaves very minimal adhesive on there. If it does leave a little bit of the adhesive, or you just want to kind of blend that in a little bit more, just run a little emery board over it or sanding, some sandpaper to kind of help get that off and remove that. And it just kind of helps it so there's no residue left behind. Now I'm taking the 2, we're just going to call them a house piece, even though they're kind of like a picket fence, or I think they're supposed to be kind of like a house, but we're taking the 2 house pieces and we're going to place them against the side pieces here. You want your side pieces to be on the outside. See how I slipped this piece on the inside there? Because you don't want any rough edges to show when you're looking at this head on if you're looking at it from a house facing you. Now I'm just using some E6000 glue. I feel like this works a little bit better than hot glue, but like some Gorilla Glue would work great. Some of the Dollar Tree super glue would work great. I just like the gel consistency of the E6000 here to make sure that I'm getting a good bond, but any type of like adhesive that you're used to using. So I put that on all three sides, and then I'm just going to set that off to the side there and then put some glue on my other one so I can work fairly quickly once I have this done. This is why I don't think hot glue would work the best, because I feel like it would break down over time, and I feel like sometimes if it dries a little bit, it gets a little clumpy, and I don't want that happening with this. I want this to look as clean and precise as I can. Now I'm just going to, now I realized here quickly that I'd place the outside of this piece on the inside. So when you're doing this and putting it together, just make sure you have all of the outside pieces that have that kind of planked wood look on the outside. And you can do this with any wood pieces. I mean, say you had like a couple pieces of picket fence or some scrap wood in your garage, you could definitely cut these down and make this. You wouldn't have to use anything from Dollar Tree. If you already had some scrap wood, it would be a free project for you to make. So I'm just fitting these together very nicely here, making sure that I line all of the edges up. You do have a little bit of movement with that E6000 that you can kind of scoot any of the pieces around as you need. Now, I love these clamps. These are some of my favorite clamps. I have them in a couple of different sizes, and it really helps to get that pressure and leave that on until that E6000 dries. And then this is going to be a pretty permanent fixture here. So I'm just going to line the sides up on this side now, and I'm going to place another one of these clamps. And I'm just making sure that the sides line up the best, because I want this to look, I mean, if you decide you're going to sell these or anything like that, you definitely want the most professional look. So just take your time and make sure that everything looks really nice and clean there. And so then I just squeeze this other set of clamps on here, and I leave this overnight to dry. And you can kind of see here, I need to kind of scoot that in a little bit more, push it down, make sure that's got a really even, you have a little bit, like I said with that E6000, a little bit of movement to do that. And then these clamps just squeeze on here to have that really nice firm tight. And again, I just leave this overnight, give it one last little squeeze there so it can dry completely. So the next day I come back and I'm going to remove these clamps, and there's a little trigger on them that you just kind of pull, and that releases the tension. They're very easily to operate, and then they just slide off. I just pick these up like at Home Depot or Lowe's. You can order them on Amazon. They're pretty easy to find at any type of home decor store, or not home decor store, but home improvement store. Now, just showing you how sturdy this box is, it is not going anywhere. That E6000 worked great to give this the bond that it needed. I'm going to go over this with a little bit of a fingernail file. You guys know me, you know I love to distress things, so whether you paint this or whether you distress it, leave it as it is. Anyway, it's going to be beautiful. This has a little bit of grooves in it to kind of have it look like planks of wood, so it really does kind of help those pop when you sand around them. You can kind of see, I'll show you, I just think it looks really nice and kind of has a good rustic touch. If you were to sell these, you could do several different finishes, see which sold best for you, but I'll just repeat that same process around the entire piece. Now I'm just going to stick any plant that you've got at home or any type of greenery or anything like that. This is just like a little planter box for you, and so it's going to be really cute and really nice. However, I have this piece of rope. I had some extra rope lying around from another project. I'm just going to spray it with some water and kind of pull it taut and then let it dry flat so I can get that little kink that was in there out of it. Now, you don't have to do the rope. This is totally optional. Don't go out and buy it. It's going to take you over that $5 budget. But if you happen to have some laying around your house or in your garage or something, you just need maybe like not even quite a foot, like 10 inches maybe of it. And I just tied it in a knot on either end. I'm going to place this in here and glue it down with some hot glue, and I'm going to glue it onto either side on the inside. And then to have this hold in place until that glue dries, I just use a couple of my little Dollar Tree clamps. I love these things. Do you guys use these in your crafting? They come in a couple different sizes, and I feel like I use them all the time. But that's just going to help that rope stay in place and get a good bond there. Now, you're not going to be carrying this by the rope. However, if you were to sell this, somebody might think like, oh, I can carry this by the rope, and you don't want it coming off. The glue does give a really good bond, but I do go in with my staple gun and I just give it a staple on each side. Just make sure your staples are deep enough to go through the rope and the wood there. You could even, look how cute this looks with the plant in there. You could even drill like a hole, like on either side, like right here, you could drill a hole on either side and have the rope come through and tie on the knot on the outside or the inside. That would be really cute. But look at how beautiful this is. It was a very simple project. It did not take much time at all. And I think for the impact and the size of this piece, for being less than $5, is great. And of course, if you were to sell these, you wouldn't have to put a plant in them. You could display it with a plant and show, because a lot of us, especially crafters, have a lot of greenery laying around our house that you could just stick in here. But for different seasons, to tuck into on a shelf, I think this is just beautiful. What do you guys think of this piece? Do you like this one?
This darling sign came from Etsy, and it is darling the way that it is, but it is the perfect shape for exactly what I would like to do. They're having such amazing clearance right now, and I love that you can see it was $25 and I paid less than $5 for it, so it's definitely a bargain. Always check out that clearance section or the sales section at your local craft store or home decor store, and just keep in mind that you can always repurpose things. Now this chicken is absolutely adorable, but I did need to sand the surface on this sign because I wanted my paint to stick to it really well, and it kind of had a texture on it that I wanted to rough up a bit so my paint really would stick really well to it. I'm going to try a crackle technique on this sign here, and so I want my base color to be kind of a dark brown, and as I was doing this I do end up adding a little bit of white. I'll show you that in just a moment and kind of show you why I did that, but I just make sure that I get every edge of the sign. Now a sign from Dollar Tree would work fine. Some scrap wood would work fine. You just basically want this general shape. And I wanted this to kind of look like wood coming through, or have just a couple different dimensions or elements of paint coming through. And so I dry brushed some white onto here, and I'm really happy with how this all comes together in the end. So even though I don't love the way it looks right here while I'm doing this, it comes out really well in the end with the crackle technique on it. So I just make sure to pounce a little bit of that white paint on the sides too, so that way the whole sign looks cohesive. So this is a crackle medium. You can get it in spray form, you can get it in liquid form like this. There's several different brands. This is Folk Art, and I just placed it down on my sign, and you're going to paint all over the entire sign. And you can see how glossy it looks there once you get everything done. Read your instructions and let your item sit for as long as the instructions say. So mine said to let it sit for an hour for that to completely dry. So now I'm just taking some green, this is just some acrylic paint. It is eucalyptus leaf, I believe the color said there. And I am just going to paint this over the entire sign. Now you want to make sure that when you're using a crackle medium, you do not paint over the area that you've already done. You don't keep going back over it because you will disturb the process. So that's why you can kind of see me working in sections here. And you can already see in that first area the crackle is starting to take effect. Now, the crackle medium is something that's been around for a long time. I think it's kind of gaining a little bit more popularity now. So I was so excited to be able to use it and kind of show you how this works. You can see there how that crackle starts to look. I just love it. Now, while this paint was a little bit wet, I took my finger inside of a baby wipe and went along some of the edges. This sign had kind of a natural wood edge to it that kind of had some like cut marks in it. And so I just went along with my finger along each of those. So that way, to kind of distress it a little bit more, kind of a wet distressing here. So that way the edges of these little details on the sign kind of popped. So if your sign doesn't have that, obviously you may want to skip this step here, but just showing you that when you have fun little detailed edges or things like that, it makes them pop a little bit more if you do kind of do a little bit more distressing. Now, I know at Walmart, your craft store, a lot of different places are starting to carry a huge amount of these wood cut letters. So you don't have to do this. You can use stenciling, you can do a Cricut, you can hand do it, you can print on tissue paper, but I just wanted to show you all these different types of letters that I found at Hobby Lobby. They also had these darling galvanized letters, which would have been really cute. Of course, you just want to pay attention to the price of them. I am just doing these letters right here that spell the word herbs. I thought this would be perfect for my porch this summer, so that way I could have a cute little herb garden, and I just thought the colors on this sign were so cute. I did take a little antiquing wax around the edge of all of these letters to kind of help them pop a little bit more, and I'm just using some super glue. This is like the DAP brand that I get at Lowe's, Gorilla Glue, any kind of glue, even the stuff you get at Dollar Tree would work fine. I really like using that on these letters with the paint. I feel like you get a really good bond, and I don't have a problem with them sticking or coming off or anything like that. And you do have a few seconds of time to be able to move your letters around after you place them down, so you can kind of manipulate them a little bit. But look at how darling this sign turns out. I love this. It's going to be perfect for my porch. I love the colors and the contrast, and you can see with the crackle how you get both the white and the brown from behind, and I think that really adds such a darling element to this sign. What do you guys think of this? Do you like this?
For this particular riser, I wanted to do a theme kind of like a cake stand, so that's kind of what I'm going for here. So I am just putting these little wooden half beads into a Ziploc bag with some antiquing wax, and I'm just going to kind of like mush them around, judge them around, get them all covered and everything. I do just want to mention that I do use this in my kitchen a lot, but it is not food safe, so you just don't want to put food directly on it. Just lay like a napkin down or some tissue paper down or something like that. Just make sure there's some type of barrier between your food and the cake stand itself. So after I dump these beads out, I just take a baby wipe and kind of wipe the top of them so that way they're not very goopy at all. And I just take this little wooden round that you can find like at Home Depot, Hobby Lobby. Somebody told me that Dollar Tree Plus, if you're lucky enough to have one of those, sells these. So just whatever size that you would like. And I'm just using the antiquing wax to go over with a baby wipe and stain this completely on all sides. For the base, I am just using a wooden candlestick, and I'm doing a taller one because I did want this to be very high. And so you can get these at your local craft store. You can get them at home decorating stores, thrift stores, wherever. You might even have some just on hand. But I chose one that was a little bit higher because I wanted more of that traditional like cake stand height. So just a little bit higher one, I guess. Anyway, so I just stained this completely to match, so the base and the top match. And then to put these beads on, I just use a combination of wood glue and hot glue and just work my way around the entire outside portion of this wood round. After I get all those half beads glued on, I do go back over with a little bit of the antiquing wax and a brush just to kind of fill in any areas that it might have gotten rubbed off or didn't cover completely. And that way you don't see any of like the bare wood sticking through. That's up to you if you want to do that or not. I did kind of like the way that it worked. I do end up distressing this with some white paint, so I guess it wouldn't entirely matter, but it is just, I'm just pointing out that I did that step. So now I just use wood glue and hot glue to glue that base onto my cake stand there. And then I've got, you can see here, I'm going to take my white paint on a brush and I go around all of those little half beads there and then across the top to give this a very rustic look. I love how this looks. I use this all the time in my kitchen. It permanently has a home in my china hutch with various things on it. I don't always use it for food, but it is kind of fun to pull out when we're having get-togethers or something to use, just kind of to have a different level on our table that I'm serving from. Again, just have a barrier between the wood and your food itself. But definitely let me know what you think of this one. I love the height of this one. It definitely makes this piece, and I absolutely love it. This is a super cute and fun little idea for a riser. Both of these pieces came from Dollar Tree. Now this metal candle base is a little flimsy, so I was just trying to bend it to be as straight as I could. And then I'm using this little scalloped tray that is available in the Crafter's Corner at Dollar Tree. Now using a couple of tumbling tower blocks, I'm going to glue them to the top of our candle holder here, and then we're going to glue this to the wooden tray. Now, I initially was going to paint this all the same color and do kind of a different technique with it. However, as I started painting this, I ended up really liking the gold color with the paint that I was using. So in full disclosure, if I was to do this again, I would paint the wooden piece now before I glued it onto the base. But since I thought I was going to be doing this all the same color, that's why it kind of is the way that it is. So just keep that in mind. I'm using duck egg, vintage duck egg from Dixie Belle. I love this color. It is kind of a bluish eucalyptus. I just love it. I think it is such a fun color, and I feel like it's perfect for spring as well. Now this is when I was deciding I liked the gold color on the base, so it was a little tedious getting the underneath, which you do want to do because you will see the underneath part. To brighten up that gold, I'm using some antique gold rub and buff to go all over this. That's just going to take care of any imperfections. And while I had that, I decided to go along all of the edges on my little tray. And this works out so nice because you get that beautiful scalloped edge. And so it's going to hit that and it's going to highlight that and make it so beautiful. And when the light catches it, it is so pretty. You could also do this with some antiquing wax. You could also sand this if you wanted to have more of a rustic look with it. For some reason, the gold was just hitting me today when I was doing this DIY, and so I just kind of went with it. So if gold is not your thing, you have plenty of options. I even went and rubbed along the surface to kind of give a little bit of a hint of the gold because when the light catches it, it was so pretty. So I just kind of wanted to bring as much of it in as I could to tie the two together. Here it is completely done. This was such an easy project, something that you could do with kids or grandkids even, to have a cute little riser for their nightstand or something. I just think this turned out beautiful, perfect for springtime, or really, this is an everyday piece. This is something that you could use and decorate for all different seasons, but I think it turned out so beautiful. You'll have to let me know your thoughts on this. Do you love risers as much as I do? I am loving cutting boards right now, and they are all the rage, and I found this darling little decorative cutting board at Hobby Lobby when it was 50% off, so I paid $4 for it. I am not using this for food. It is strictly for decor purposes, and I have these cute little finials that I got on Amazon, and I will leave a link to those down in my description box, but we're going to use these as the feet. So I am staining them with just some antiquing wax, so that way they will match the cutting board, and depending on what cutting board you pick up or you're trying this with, you can paint your feet accordingly to kind of match, or stain them both to kind of be the same. So I just took that little leather handle off. I decided that I didn't need that, and I'll just use a combination of wood glue and hot glue and use my ruler, and I'm just going to space out where I am putting these feet so I can get them kind of as symmetrical as I can. One of the most common questions I get is about my rulers that I use. Guys, I did pick these up about 3 or 4 years ago at TJ Maxx or Home Goods, and I have not seen them since. But if I ever find anything close to this, I will definitely let you guys know and leave a link to them. But I'm just using this to make sure that I get those feet pretty well, like on the same line, and that way it's not going to lean or anything when I place down this cutting board. But look at how absolutely darling this ends up looking with my little decor on here. This is so cute, and I mean really it just adds so much of a good element to lift these items up off your original surface. What do you guys think of this one? I am so excited to show you this project. I absolutely love the final result. Now, a few weeks back, I showed you my Dollar Tree haul, and I got this cute little picket fence sign from Dollar Tree. And I had so many of you be like, oh, I've had those, I've seen those, or I'm excited to see what you do. So I hope that this is something that you maybe haven't seen before, and it turns out super cute. So hopefully you can give this a try. Now, on this particular sign, these things come off so easy. Both signs that I have tried to remove things from, they pop right off. They don't ruin the sign. So hopefully that's how everybody finds their sign. So I just get everything removed from the sign, and then I just cover it in white chalk paint. You could do whatever color that you would like. And then I'm going to go put with a Sharpie marker, just put the slats back on this fence by just using a ruler and drawing some straight lines there. And then I'm going to go over them with some white paint to dull them down a little bit, because I don't want the huge contrast of the black with the I want it to look aged and kind of more natural, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. I know I say if that makes sense a lot, but I guess in my mind I just want to make sure that I'm saying it so you can understand it. So I apologize for that. Anyway, now I'm just taking some antiquing wax on a chip brush, and I wiped a little bit of it off on my baby wipe there, and then I'm just slowly going back and forth here on each of the slats to kind of give it a wood feel. And then I'll kind of go back, and you want to make sure not to go over an area that you've already done, because that will smear the wax and it won't give you the really good streak lines there. Now, these boxes I'm sure you've seen at Dollar Tree. I'm removing the centers out of them, and we're just going to use the bases of these little drawers. So I'm just using some wood glue and some hot glue to get these glued together. And I had somebody ask me if that wouldn't compromise the wood glue by using hot glue, and it does not at all. It's actually pretty common practice if you don't have like clamps that size or something, or in a pinch, to use hot glue to clamp them close, that instant hold to keep the wood glue there and in place. Now I do have clamps, so I am just going to clamp this together, and I wasn't intending on doing this, but I really don't want there to be a space between those little boxes. I want them to look as cohesive as possible. Now I'm taking some craft sticks. You could do painter sticks, you could do the craft popsicle sticks, whatever. These are just some sticks that I got on Amazon. I'll see if I can link them below for you. And they don't have like the curved edge like the painter stick. That's why I like them. And I thought it would really elevate this to have it look like a little planter box if I put this edge on it. So I just cut it to size, just by eyeballing, kind of where I measured it, cutting it with my scissors, and then I'm just using the wood glue and the hot glue. You do want to make sure, you can see there that I don't put the hot glue over the wood glue. You don't want those two to mix. You want the wood glue to actually only be touching the wood. And then I just cover this in white paint. I went back and forth if I wanted to do just stain it brown, which would be really cute too, but I am really happy with how it looks all together at the end. I like the really light color to it. So then this is just one of these cute little signs that they do at Dollar Tree all year long. This is one of like the hollow ones, if you can see what I'm talking about here, that's not like the solid wood, and that's what we want. And so I just removed that little hanger because I want this to be like a little tray shelf on here. So I'm just going to measure this. You can see it's way too big for how it is, so I need to cut it down. So I'm just kind of measuring it there and seeing exactly how I want it. And you can kind of see, the cameras are really hard to pick up, that I drew a little line right there where I'm going to cut this. Now I pull out my miter box and I cut this down with my miter box. So you can do that however you would like. You could also build, like with just using some paint sticks, your own little tray to go there. I just thought I was going to try to use the sign, and it actually works out really well. Now I need this to be closed on the end, so the piece that I cut off, I am just going to tear that little end piece off. It snaps right off, and just using some super glue of some sort, I'm just going to glue that back onto the end so it makes a shorter sign. Now by all means, if you can find a shorter sign at Dollar Tree that works, it's already this size, definitely use that. So this paper just peels off of here, and then if you spray it with some water and let it sit for a couple of minutes, you can scrape all of that glue and all of the residue and the excess paper off. So I just get that all clear. You don't really want to paint over it because it will start to peel up the paper. It'll absorb the paint and it won't look very nice. So I do recommend taking all of that paper off. Now I paint that other tray white, and then I go back in and distress everything because you guys know that I love to distress things. So completely optional here how you decide to do this. I didn't sand any of it. I only used just antiquing wax on my chip brush, and I just went over all of the edges, and I thought that little lip going around the edge there gave it a really good dimension. It added a lot with the to add a little more distressing to it. Now I'm going to glue this onto our little fence here using just some super glue. So I don't use any hot glue because I didn't want it to push out at all. I wanted it to be as flush as it could. And sometimes with hot glue, it will dry a little bit before you push it, and it will not let it sit flush to the thing. So that's why I did that. And I didn't have any clamps that would really clamp that really good. So now I'm just distressing this other little tray here just the same way, just antiquing wax on a little chip brush and going around getting the coverage that I want. And then on the back side of it, I also use some super glue and then place that, and I could kind of get the corners, but there was a little bowing in the middle, so I just held it with my fingers for about 60 seconds for it to dry. You guys, look at how cute this little fence, like potting bench. I don't even know what you want to call it, but I think it's so cute. So now I'm just going to accessorize it. And you guys, this is something that you can use all year long and accessorize with all sorts of different seasons. I'm just putting a little beaded garland, kind of fits right over those little pegs on the pickets on that little fence there. And the little tray lets you just stick some things in. Kind of think of like an alternative. You guys know I love to do like different types of tiered trays, and I feel like this really kind of fits that bill. And you can just see that things just sit right in there. So here's a little bonus DIY. I wanted something else on my shelf there, but I couldn't find anything in my stash that really worked. So I'm just taking, this is a wooden nameplate card for like a table setting. And on one side, it's a chalkboard. It's just the plain wood on the other side. And it came from Hobby Lobby in a pack of like 10. It was like $2 or $3. So keep an eye open for those because I love this shape. And this is just a Dollar Tree rub-on transfer that I am using. I thought this was so cute. If you guys follow me on Instagram and you see this transfer at your Dollar Tree, message me and
and let me know. I would love to find some more of them. Now, as I'm peeling this back, if there's an area that the design is not fully transferred, I just lay it back down and then I just go over it with my little craft stick there to make sure that it's fully transferred. Where the antiquing wax does make it take a little bit of extra time because that wax, it doesn't want to stick to the best. You guys, this is one of those items that I kind of visualized it. I had the little idea, and as I was putting it together, I'm like, this could be a total fail. But oh my gosh, like I am so excited with the outcome of this. I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's going to be so fun to decorate for all different seasons. It's a piece that can stay out all year long in my home, and it was constructed with all Dollar Tree items. Like that just blows me away. Is this something that you guys would make? If you did, would you leave it up year round? I would love to know your thoughts on this piece. Do you guys remember when I made this Gothic window? It was about a year ago when I made it. I'll leave a link to the video down in my description box, but I wanted to make one that was a little bit of a different shape and had a little bit of a different size to it and a different design in it. So that's what I'm going to tackle today. I found an image on Canva. You can find them on Google Images. You can purchase window designs on Etsy, and I just printed it out across multiple pages. I used an app called Split Print on my MacBook, and it does cost about $5 for the app, but you get to do as many times as you would like to, as many different designs like this. Whereas if I was to pay for an engineering print, I would have to pay every time that I did it. So I thought it was a decent investment. So I just cut my design out on the, like a right angle. You can see kind of on the side and the bottom of my window, and I'm just using some Gorilla Spray adhesive. Be very careful with this stuff. It does get to be very sticky. I just put a light coat here, and then I will place the straight edge of the side of the window and of the base of the window against, so that way I know that those two sides right there are going to be completely straight. I just rub out any air pockets, get that adhered really well, and then just using my drill with a large enough drill bit that my jigsaw blade will fit through. I just drill what are called pilot holes in each of like the window openings. So you can see how each of those window areas have one there. So I can stick that blade of my jigsaw down through there. Now, if you've never used a jigsaw before, never fear. I'm here to hopefully calm your fears a little bit. That window that you saw at the beginning of my video was the very first time I had ever used a jigsaw. They are very easy to use. I was really nervous the first time I used one that it was going to be like more than I could handle. It was going to go so fast and I was not going to be in control, and that couldn't be further from the truth. You have complete control. You have a little trigger that you'll press with your finger on the handle, and you get to control how fast you go or how slow that you go. So it is very easy. You get the hang of it very, very quickly. Once I started to use my jigsaw, literally my creating world exploded with possibilities of different things that I could do. So if you have one at your home, or if you have thought about purchasing one before, this one is one that plugs in. You can see I have a cord on it. I think I paid about $60 for it. So it is a little bit of an investment. They do have lesser price models, but I was given the advice to spend a little bit extra for a little bit nicer one because it is a little smoother. So I can't tell you what the other ones feel like, but this one is really nice and it is very easy to use. I always wear my safety glasses when using any of my power tools. I do, however, like to wear some earplugs when I am doing my jigsaw. This project from beginning to totally the end probably took about an hour and a half, and that's with painting it and everything. So the cutting out process took maybe like 45 minutes or so, not super long. Once you get going, it moves fairly quickly. You can just see that you have to stick your blade in those pilot holes and kind of work your way up to the lines on the window there. And my window, you can see the frame has that little area that I didn't cut that little white area out in my frame. I decided to have a thick frame, so I'm just cutting along the outside of it. So I'm just going up around the exterior of my window right now, and then you'll be able to see that as I go back up on this other side that I'm just holding on to the window with my other hand, so that way when I make the last cut and it kind of breaks free, you'll be able to see here in just a moment, it doesn't fall on the ground and break or anything. I'm just holding on to it, so I will be able to catch that. So you'll see here as I get to that point, the window comes loose and I'm able to just have that with my hand.
and so easy. Now when you have your jigsaw, it's got that trigger on it. So when you're pushing it, it goes, and as soon as you let go, your jigsaw stops. So you have total control over that. So now I'm just kind of peeling off this paper. If you need to use like a wet sponge or anything or sand it off, you can. Now when you first cut it out, you're like, this looks kind of ugly. Like the cuts are not super straight, but that's what you want. You want this window to look like it was carved out of wood. So you're just going to soften all of those cuts with a sander. I recommend using an electric sander on this. You could use a block sander, but it would take a lot of time. But I'm just going around all of the edges, kind of rounding them off a little bit. Again, we want this window to look like it was carved out of wood and maybe has just sat around and been aged for a long time. So I sand both sides of it. Every little area that was cut with the jigsaw, I sand. And then I just take this into my studio and I'm just going to give it a couple of coats of white chalk paint. This is the fun part because you can tailor this to what your decor needs are or how you want to decorate it. You'll just do front and back, and then you have to remember to go inside all of those little areas as well. So now I'm going to make just a little window seal. So I am just taking one of the 5-gallon paint stir sticks from the hardware store and I'm just marking it off where I want. I'm just using my little miter box there to cut that off with, and then I'm just sanding the edges on it so it matches, and I put some wood glue along the base of that. Now I had not painted the base of that, so it's like, you know, the bare wood touching bare wood, and I'm just clamping that as I go through and distress this. So just using, I'm a big fan of fingernail files because of the detail that they can, little spaces they can get into. So whatever you use to sand with, I just go around all of the edges. Takes a couple of minutes to do this, but it's just going to knock some of the paint off just to make it look aged, because that is what we're going for. And then using some mineral paint, which is very close to that original color of the MDF board that is sticking through there, you'll just go ahead and dry brush it on to kind of give a little bit more distress. Now you could skip sanding completely and use that mineral paint if you would like to. So I have this cute little wreath, and this is what I intended to do with this window. Is I wanted to add a little bit of greenery onto my wall, but I wanted a cute little design behind it. So I just took this wreath and I fed through some twine on there and just tie that onto the window itself. When I hang this, I will just stick a couple of nails where the little crossbars are at the top of my window, so it will rest on those, but you could easily add hardware onto the back. I would love to know what your guys' thoughts on this window is. I absolutely love them. I love making them. It's such a fun project. It is a great beginner's project for a jigsaw. Find someone that knows how to use power tools if you're kind of scared to use them, and have them kind of help you. It only takes 1 or 2 times of using them with someone there for you to get that confidence and be able to make these projects. But I'm so excited to hang this, and I absolutely loved how it turned out. It would even be cute to just have sitting like this, resting against something. You wouldn't even have to hang it. I happened to be at Dollar Tree one day when they were getting a shipment of these 3D orbs in. They were kind of stocking them. So I grabbed one thinking, oh, I'll figure something to do with this. And honestly, I wish that I had grabbed more because I have not seen them since then. And that was like all the way back in February. So I just put the orb together, and I'm taking this candlestick from Dollar Tree and I'm just using a massive amount of hot glue to glue this orb to this candlestick. So you're going to hold it for a while, I guess is what I'm saying. And then I wanted to have some type of little platform there in case you wanted to stick like a plant is what I put in there, a candle, something. So I just used one of my canning jar lids and glued that in there because I am going to spray paint this and do some other things with it, you'll see. And so you won't be able to tell that that's what it is. So I'm just using some matte spray paint, and I had a little wood finial that I did glue on the very top. And then I am going around to just give this a really rough up finish, and then I'm just staining some beads here because there is a gap between the pillar, the candle pillar, and the little jar lid. So I thought it would be a perfect area to kind of tuck in some beads. To give this a really roughed up, rusted, old aged look, I am just using a bunch of different colors of paint, and I'm using like a garbage sack, or not a garbage sack, but I will sometimes use it as a garbage sack, but a grocery sack that I had. And I am just using some of the truffle paint, some elephant chalk paint, and I am just going over this to make it look like it's kind of wrought iron that has sat out in your garden for a long, long time and just kind of started to age and rust. I decide that I want it to look even more aged, so I am taking some baking soda, a little bit of orange paint, and then some more of the truffle color of Waverly, but really just any brown that you have would do, or even like a maroon. And I just mix kind of a couple of those paint colors together with some baking soda, and then just lightly go around and just kind of pushing it on with my paintbrush to kind of give it a little bit more. You can kind of see how it really does just kind of look rusted and aged. I just really like how it came out, and I love using the baking soda because when things kind of rust and they bubble up a little bit, they really do have that texture, and the baking soda really does kind of help give it that realistic look. Now I'm just going ahead and touching up that bottom since it kind of was the shiny color of the white. I wanted it to kind of be more matte, so I did cover that with some chalk paint is what I did there. So I'm just taking a pot right there that I had, and I just painted it white and kind of roughed it up. That's what my plant is going to go in. And then I just used a little bit of elephant chalk paint to kind of give a little bit of an aged look to the base of it. And now I'm just going to take these beads and hot glue them in all the way around that little gap that is between my jar lid and the candle pillar. I do take just a little bit of what dry paint is left in my brush there and kind of brush it over the beads and everything to kind of brighten them up a bit and make it look like one cohesive piece. And there is my little pot that I did with a little bit of white paint and then a little bit of the elephant chalk paint, and I just stuck a cute little plant in it. This turned out so cute, and I have used this in my house all year long, and I've gotten so many compliments on it. And I do kind of change the plant up a little bit for the different seasons and everything. But I would love to know down in the comments what you guys think of this. If you guys are a fan of this, if you like this, I would love to know. This is one of my most favorite risers ever. I found this wall hanging at Hobby Lobby, and you can see here how it has the little detail to hang on a wall. It was $22. I got it at 50% off, so it was $11, but it's absolutely beautiful. And I have these little candle cups that I got at the little wood section there at Hobby Lobby as well, but I'll see if I can leave a link down in my description box to find these on Amazon. But I'm just going to turn this into a riser. I thought it would be so beautiful. So I'm just taking my needle nose pliers there to put inside of my little candle cup, and I'm just going to paint these the same color, or as close as I can get to the same color as my actual tray that I'm going to use. And then since the tray itself is distressed, I am going to distress the little feet here so that way it matches and gives it one nice look. I just want to point out that you should always just look for shapes of things that you like. And if you think that just try it. I had no idea how this would end up looking, but I love it so much. And I'm just taking some E6000 and some hot glue, and I'm just putting these feet evenly spaced around the base of this on the back side, so that way it will stand up off of the counter. And then as you can see here, I'm just making sure that all of my glue is cleaned up because you don't want to see any of that seeping out anywhere. I thought this piece was absolutely beautiful when I saw it. I just didn't have anywhere in particular in my home that I could think of to hang it. So this way I still get to use it in my home and enjoy its beauty. Here it is all decorated with some decor. Let me know what you guys think of this one. I think this is so high end, and it is so simple. And it is so awesome to be able to take a piece that you love and be able to convert it into something that will work for your home. I have been loving these little succulent displays I have been seeing. This one is from Kirkland's, and it will be our inspiration piece. Now you may, if you've watched me, remember this piece from Easter time that I created. I had this little drawer that I found at Hobby Lobby on clearance, but you can use any container that you might have, such as this one from Dollar Tree. I have even seen these dough bowls are everywhere. I have a good link on Amazon. I'll leave down there for you to find them inexpensively. But I've seen a lot of different displays in those. Even these little boxes that you may have seen like in your thrift store or from floral arrangements. I have a video where I redid that one. I can leave the link to that as well. But I'm just going to use this piece from Easter so I can have it be more of a year-round piece. So I'm just going to remove these eggs that I had put on barbecue skewers. Now if I decide to at Easter time slip these eggs back into this piece, I can easily do that. So I'm just taking a bunch of different succulents that I have. Now these came from a combination of Dollar Tree, Amazon, and Hobby Lobby. I'm going to start with this taller piece right here because I feel like that kind of gives a little bit of height, so I'm starting with that. And then I also have this one, I think this is called like string of pearls or something in the succulents world. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm just going to slip this down here in this corner kind of opposite from where my height is to kind of give a little bit of drooping and swoopness, if that like coming down, cascading over, if that makes sense. I felt like that gave a really good balance. Now I am by no means a florist, an arranger of florals or anything. You guys know that I kind of just do what looks good and what's pleasing to my eye, and that is what is so wonderful about this is you really can't do anything wrong. As long as you're doing it to what you like, you're going to do a fantastic job. I'm not hot gluing anything into this arrangement right now, so I can change it out if I decide to. This little box does have a layer of styrofoam that I glued in there. In fact, I'll leave a link in my description box of the original video so you can see how I set this box up with the styrofoam if you're interested in that. But if I do want to replace those eggs or anything else in there, I can take these out, or I can switch things around if I want to. Now, if you guys have never heard me talk about succulents, I always pick some up at Dollar Tree. Their succulents for $1 is great. However, on Amazon, you can find the most beautiful succulents that ends up being about $1.25 to $1.50 per piece of succulents, which now that Dollar Tree is $1.25, it makes it much more comparable in price to those, but they are so much more realistic. And like the string of pearls that I got that is drooping over the edge was part in one of the packages that I got. You get some really good different variations. So I'll leave a link to that as well if you're looking for some really good alternative to Dollar Tree succulents, because I feel like you get the same like 4 or 5 different pieces there. It's really hard to find some of the different variations. And in the packages you get on Amazon, you get a lot, and I feel like it's a very comparable in price. Just make sure that you're turning your box or your little container all the way around. Get it from a 360 view to get all of those spaces filled in. Now here is a look again at the Kirkland's version, and here is a look at the version that I recreated. I love this. I love the fresh feeling that it has. And honestly, like this maybe was about $25 to recreate, but the original pieces I have seen go for well over $100 to $200 depending on how big they are. What do you guys think of this? Do you like the succulent arrangements like this? They are becoming one of my most favorites. This project is perfect if you have a couple pieces of some scrap wood hanging around. You guys, if you've watched me for any time, know that we had a barn we tore down, and so we have a bunch of extra barn wood. So I am just using that for this particular DIY, but you could even use a couple of Dollar Tree signs for the background as well. I just wanted there to be a decent size to this, so I am just sandwiching these 2 pieces together here. I just put some wood glue down the center, and then I am just going to use my clamps to help that dry. I am not going to do any additional nails or support or anything. I have found when I've done this, it holds up great because it's very little use that it's going to get. It's just going to be setting on a shelf. Now on the edges where I cut my wood down, I'm just going in with some antiquing wax to cover that up, so that way it is not like the fresh wood there that it all looks like it's all weathered and aged. I am going to use this cute little tag in the project, so I am just untying the twine because I want to put that back on in the end. And I'm just wanting to make this look like enamel, so I'm covering it completely in white chalk paint. I'm not putting anything on the back because it's going to be glued onto the project. You won't see that. But I go around the edges with some black paint. And I like to use my foam brush to do that because I feel like I get a really good precision with that, if that makes sense, going around the edges, because I can just kind of rub that on the edge. And then I want this to look like the enamel is chipped in areas. So I will go in on different areas, and I'll show you here. I kind of will like squish my sponge on the side there and let that black paint kind of seep on, and then just kind of pull that into the direction I want, and that kind of makes it look like chipped enamel. Now, of course, this is just if you want to have a look like this is how you do it. You could easily just leave it all white if you wanted to. And then you could use a rub-on transfer, you could do some freehand, whatever you wanted to put on this tag is up to you. I chose to cut out the word hello. I thought this looked so cute on here and very welcoming. And so on the little tag hanger there, I go in with a little teeny tiny brush, you can see, and just kind of give that a little bit of the enamel look too. So now back to our wood background. Once that dries, I am taking this little piece of like coconut, I don't know, it's like what you put in the bottom of pots, and I cut it in half. So I'm just using half of it. And then I have these florals. The one came from Dollar Tree, the purple flowers. The other one I've had in my stash for literally like years. I don't even know where I got it from. But I'm taking this little plant liner and I am going to staple it onto my wood piece and to kind of look like it's like a little planter pot there. You can kind of see the look I'm going for here. And then I even have to, after I staple it, I want it to be very flat against the wood. So I will go with some hot glue on the edges and glue that down completely. And then I'll just kind of press that down until it dries there. And then I have this bucket of paint, and that's what I end up using to make sure it dries securely. This is such a fun project because you can customize it with the different florals that you wanted to use. I just love this little grass that I have. And again, I wish I knew where I picked this up. I want to say I think I might have got it at the at-home store. I've literally had it for like maybe 10 or more years. It's been forever. And so I'm just layering that in there. And then the purple flowers I thought would look so cute to have kind of hanging out. And I set it up so I can kind of position them where I want them because I just thought that would look so cute. And I go in with my staple gun and I staple it all down against the wood so that way it's nice and secure in there. So that's how I get it to stay. And then I put a lot of hot glue. You can see I'm just putting tons and tons on the inside there. And because I want that plant liner, the little pot liner, to be nice and flat. And so I put my paint on there to make sure that dries completely flat there. And then I will just kind of come in here and fix everything once it's dry to make sure everything's positioned how I want it to look. So hopefully this is making sense to you. Now I want to put this cute little tag on the front because it does kind of break up that little pot liner there. And so I just put the little tie back on and then I'm going to staple this on as well. You'll see how I do that. So I just tie this off completely before I staple it down and I'm just going to position it and then kind of flip it up. You can kind of watch how I do this here. And then I just kind of, and I'm sorry that I get a lot of my arm in the shot there, just kind of staple that down and flip it back over. And then I just put a lot of hot glue on the back of it and just hold that down so it's just glued completely into place. And then I go in and this little coconut husk stuff that this is made out of, I just kind of fluff it up to kind of give it a little bit of texture. I just absolutely love how this turns out. I think this is so cute. I love the floral choice that I made, but that's definitely something that you could change to your liking. I want to know what you guys think of this if you like it. I just think that this is so beautiful and I can't wait to use this. I found this cute little soda carrying case for $2 when I was thrifting at my last little thrifting adventure. It has this little bottle opener on the side. When I saw it, I knew immediately what I wanted to do with it. So I'm just going to take the bottle opener off here and just leave this without it. Now, when I was making this video, this random like strawberry appeared on my table and I had to go back and watch the footage and you can see my son throwing it in there. He denied it until I showed him that footage. And then he was like, okay, fine, I was caught red-handed. I don't know. I thought I would leave it in there because it was just kind of fun. Now, I just am grabbing some of my stencils that I have here. I wanted this to say fresh herbs, and I have this little sign that had the word fresh already on it, and so I thought it would be kind of fun to utilize what I had there. And then I'll use those Dollar Tree letters you can see down in the left-hand corner there. I'll use those to put the herbs word on that bottom little slat of my little carrying case here. I really wanted this to be kind of an organic, fresh looking little carton that you would maybe cut fresh herbs from your garden or something and place them in there while you were carrying them. And so that was kind of the vibe that I was going for with this. Now I'm just using one of those little foam circular tools that you pick up at Dollar Tree to do my stenciling here. You can see how well that works. You just want to make sure when you're doing your stencils that you don't oversaturate your tool with paint. Otherwise, you're going to end up with some seepage underneath your stencils. Now, this did not have to be perfect because I will be kind of distressing and sanding this down so it looks like it's faded and has been used through many, many trips to your garden to pick your fresh herbs. Now, when I was doing the word herbs, I decided to start with the middle letter and kind of line it up with the word fresh there. And so I started with my R and then just kind of went on either side of that. I'm sure there's lots of different ways for you to center things or do things. Again, it didn't have to be perfect in my eyes, but I think I did a pretty good job of centering it all here. But just the same process with each of the letters here to get that stencil done. To distress this a little bit, I'm just doing a little bit of dry brushing with some white paint here. I will go and sand this so it won't look quite like so janky or anything. And I do take my fingernail file and I'm just filing all the edges here. And I do go over the words and the letters that I stenciled on there. I just wanted this to look like it was pretty aged and just kind of faded, barely there that you can see those words on there. I pay attention to all of the edges because I will go around with some antiquing wax as well. You can see I'm just putting that on a baby wipe and just kind of going over all of this. What will happen is where you dry brush that white paint, it will kind of pick up that antiquing wax since it's chalk paint, and it will kind of age the paint as well as the edges. I just put a little coconut liner in the base of this, just ripped one apart from Dollar Tree and shoved that in there, and then just took some of the greenery herbs that I had in my stash and shoved in there. Of course, whatever you want to put, if you want this to be a practical thing to place some herbs in, however you want to do that or put something in here, it's just a really cute piece to have to decorate for different seasons. I think this really kind of screams that fresh spring vibe. I just love this, and I think that wood tone and the herbs, the greenery, is going to be a beautiful addition to your decor to kind of freshen it up. What do you guys think of this one? All right, so I got this wreath form at Hobby Lobby in their wood section. It was $15 at 50% off, so I got it for $7.50. These wood beads, I don't have to paint any ping pong balls. It's cheaper than Dollar Tree because when I made my ping pong ball wreath, I used 7 packages of the ping pong balls. I had to buy $1 for the wire wreath form, and I had to go out and buy special wire cutters to cut that down. And it took me like 2 hours to make, where I didn't have to do anything with this other than I just was at the craft store and saw it. So I just want you to know that you can buy items like this at the craft store. It's cheaper than Dollar Tree, a lot less headache than Dollar Tree, and in my opinion, much easier and looks better. I'm just using some spring florals that I got at the craft store. I buy them on sale. I have a bunch of them on hand. So the flowers would be the same price for either wreath that you make because you can do the same floral on either wreath. Where I have the one in purple, I decided to do one with kind of a peachy and pinkish orange color. That way I can have 2 of these around my home. They're both beautiful wreaths. I just want you to know that Dollar Tree is not always the cheapest, so just keep that in mind. So I'm just using some zip ties to get these florals on because I don't have that bulky wire wreath thing that I'm using there. The zip ties work perfect on this, and I'll just cut the stems down to size using my new wire cutters that I got, so those will come in handy. And then I am just going to use some zip ties to get this put onto the front of the wreath. So one thing that I will do is when I flip this over, I'm going to bend it so it has kind of a curve to it before I use zip ties to put it on. And you'll be able to see here how many zip ties I have there. So I have several, but I'm just going over the wreath there. You're not going to see those because we're going to glue some big peony flowers on here. And so you're not going to see these at all. You can definitely use clear ones if you'd rather. The little red ones, like I say, the greenery and everything covers them. And if you see a little bit of it, it just kind of looks like a little color of the flower that's peeking out there. So just make sure that you want this, especially if you're going to put this like on your porch or somewhere outside, you want to make sure your florals are very, very secure because if wind or anything, like a door knocking it, as it opens and closes, you want to make sure they're not going to fall off. So I just cut 3 peonies off of this. Is it peony or peonies? I say it both ways. I don't know. I've said it both ways twice now. So let me know how you say it. I don't know how you would tell me how you say it. But anyway, I am just gluing these on. So I cut 3 of them off of the stems and I just find my center that I want. And then I glue 2 on the side there. I thought those were perfect color to match that little orange other flower that I had there. I can use my other peonies and other projects that I have. And then I just go through and make sure everything is turned up right. It looks good. Here's the end project. This literally took me less than about 40 minutes to make, where my other wreath took me several hours to make. And I don't have to worry about paint chipping off of the ping pong balls, the glue not adhering between them. It was so much simpler. And you guys, it was seriously less money. So I would be very interested to know down in the comments which one you did like better. And if you were to make one, which one you would choose to make. This particular project has to be one of my most favorite projects that I have ever done since my YouTube journey. I love how this turned out. I have these, and I honestly get so many comments on this because I use it in a lot of my photos that I display my items on. So I'm making a little tiered tray out of these 2 little signs that say "This is us." Those signs are adorable the way they are, but I'm going to make them be layers on a little like garden inspired table. Now you could totally use the tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree to do this. If you have followed me for any length of time, you probably remember that I couldn't find the tumbling tower blocks for like a year at my Dollar Tree. So I just used a square dowel that I got at Lowe's for like $3 or $4. So for my bottom feet that are going to be the bottom layer of this tiered tray, you could even just use like 1 Jenga block on each of these, but I just cut 4 the same height that I wanted it to be off of my table. So that is my bottom layer. Now I measure and find out how tall I want my next layer to be. So if you're using those tumbling tower blocks, just glue like several together, and then you're just going to make sure that you have enough space you can put decor and stuff on that in between. And then I'm just going to give this base of this a really good coat of white paint. For the tops of this garden table, I wanted to do like a natural or stained wood, and so I'm just using some paint sticks that I picked up at Lowe's and just using the back side of those, and then I'm just measuring and cutting them down to fit. The top was super easy to do. The bottom, you do have to work a little bit around those legs of the table because they're on the inside of that frame. So it was a little bit like Tetris. You can see how I have it all laid out there, how I ended up having to do it for those little spaces. So it ended up being super cute, and I wanted the wood to go this way. This made it much easier than to do it long ways in my mind. So you could cut it however you wanted, but I wanted these to be vertical and the top layer to be horizontal. And then since nobody will see the back layer of this, I just glued some jumbo popsicle sticks onto the back, craft sticks, to make sure that they were not coming apart. And then I'm just staining this with some antique wax, and then just using a baby wipe, I'm just putting that on and then wiping it off to give it that really good contrast with the white paint and that dark stained wood. I am using a combination of wood glue and hot glue. Hot glue is probably sufficient. I know that this is painted in stained wood, so the wood glue probably is not holding like it should, but I'm telling you, this thing is sturdy. It is not, I mean, it's been knocked over so many times while I've been taking pictures and stuff, and it has totally held together just fine. But I think this is kind of a fun take on a tiered tray. It's not like what you would typically see, but it kind of fits into a narrower area, and seriously, I get so many comments when I use this to display items. But I did just sand around the edge on the top and then a little bit of elephant chalk paint to give this a real roughed up, kind of like it's been sitting out in your garden type look. But look at how fun it looks with some little plants on there. This was springtime when I made this, and so it's got some cute little springtime things, but I have used this all year long and absolutely love it. I picked this sign up at a garage sale last summer, and I absolutely love the little faux shiplap slats that are in there. Now this sign is cute the way that it is, but those colors do not match my house. They're kind of a little dark and drab for the fall colors that I do. So I'm excited to brighten this up and make it every day. So I take it out to my garage and I just sand it down really good with my electric sander so those letters aren't going to be peeking through the paint. And then I'm just using my little fingernail file here to do a little touch-up sanding if there were any areas that I needed to focus on, or once I got it under better light, I could kind of see some areas I needed to sand a little better. Then I just take a baby wipe and make sure that all of that grit and everything from sanding, all the dust, is totally off of it before I start painting it. I really like the black color that is on this frame, and it makes it so simple to leave it that color, and it really works with the project that I'm doing. So I just tape it off so I won't get any paint splatter or anything on that. And then I just take some chalk paint, and this is where you can customize it to your own decor. I really like the white shiplap look, and so I'm just painting white chalk paint over these slats here. I do one good coat, let it dry, and then go back over and do a second. You can do however many coats it would take to cover your project. Just know that when you're using white paint, you can kind of see my first coat there is not super, doesn't have a lot of coverage, so I'm just using my heat tool there to kind of dry that quickly so I can kind of move through this. The second coat has a lot better coverage since it is that farmhouse style and it is rustic. We want it to look a little bit aged. It's okay if you can see a little of that original base coming through. Now I'm just going to remove the frame to reveal that black portion of the frame, and I will go through and sand all of the edges and the corners to make it look even more distressed. It was already beat up kind of a little bit, so I decided just to embrace that since it is farmhouse, and we're just going to sand it a little bit more and make it a little bit more aged. Now, can you see those slats where the shiplap is? You can see the paint pooling there. I really liked how that looked. It just kind of gave it more of that aged look. Now, I got this frame at Hobby Lobby. It was on their clearance. It was about $5, it looks like there, and I loved how this looked. It was the perfect size for this. You could do whatever shape of wreath you have, whatever color, make it for Christmas time, fall time. You can change this out however you would like to do that. I have this thick burlap ribbon, and so I am just going to make this hang from the burlap ribbon. So I just cut a length of that, and then I am just lining the edges of that ribbon up. Now, I really wanted this to be sturdy hanging from this. I didn't want it to go over the top of the frame to the back. I kind of wanted to put it underneath, if that makes sense. So I just kind of pry that shiplap a little bit until it opens up there. And then I'm just going to feed that burlap ribbon through over to the back edge. Once I have that through and I have my slat pressed back in place, I am just going to cut that ribbon off. It only needs to be over just a little bit. You don't need a lot hanging there. And then I'm just going to use some hot glue to kind of give that a little bit of extra security. I glue the base portion and then the middle, and I just press that down until it's dry. Now, it does have these little sawtooth hangers. I do take one of those off. I use a hammer to place it on the back there so I can hang it the correct direction. However you would like to hang it is up to you, or you can even just lay it, stand it up against something. So now I just had to decide if I wanted the wreath to go in front of the burlap ribbon or behind. I chose to leave it behind. That's a matter of personal preference. I am so pleased with how this came out. I absolutely love this. It is perfect for everyday farmhouse. I can even change the wreath out for different seasons. Next time you're at your thrift store or a garage sale, look for these staple pieces like this that maybe you don't love the design and you saw how easy it was to change and make it super neutral. This is one of those pieces that I had a bunch of different ideas for, and I'll kind of go through the process of how I ended up with what I do with this. So it's kind of just like an apple basket or a bushel basket, but when I got looking at it, you can see on the underneath of that lid, it has the name Dale on it. And when I actually turn it upside down, it has a for Dale. So clearly this basket belongs to Dale. Wherever you are, Dale, I'm sorry, I found your basket at a thrift store. So hopefully I do something with it that you actually like. So I started sanding off the name because I didn't know how to get it off there. I originally was gonna paint this basket, but the more and more I kept thinking about it, and literally one night didn't get to sleep for hours because I kept thinking about this basket obviously was special enough that somebody was leaving it for someone else when they passed away or something, or making sure that Dale got this basket. And so I started kind of looking online to see if this was actually an antique or a piece of history. I didn't want to cover it up with a bunch of paint like I had planned on, or embellish it in any way that was going to take away from the integrity of the piece if it truly is like a piece of history. And there was only 2 baskets I found that were remotely like this with this kind of lid, and they were kind of spendy. Around $100, $150. I paid $2 for this basket. So Dale, I made a good profit on your basket. But I just couldn't come to do anything with this. I didn't want to stain it. It was a little bit lighter than matches my decor. My decor is a little bit more rich tones of wood, but I really, at least for the main part of the basket, the lid I think is about the color I wish the whole basket was, but I didn't want to do anything to this to ruin it. So if you know anything about these baskets, I would love you to give me any information. All I'm doing here is there was a couple of sharp edges to it that I needed to sand down, and then there was some stains kind of on the top part of the basket lid and on the bottom. So I just kind of sanded those a little bit to get them off, just because I wasn't able to get them off with a lot of water. Here you can kind of see I spray it down with a little mist, and I go over it with a towel just to kind of see if I could get some of those stains out. And it worked pretty well, but you can still see them if you look close enough. But again, I just didn't want to do something to ruin this piece. It's got these beautiful, this is real leather that's coming off of the sides there, and that's hinging it together. And then it's just the craftsmanship when I got looking at the basket was just something that was not like mass produced. Like it was definitely something that was indicative of the time period that it was from or something. And it makes me wonder what you would actually have used a basket with a lid like this. I'd never seen a lid quite like this. I've seen other types of lids, but not one with the leather hinges or this straight piece on the basket on the right hand or left hand side there. You can see that piece that where the handle is attached to, and then it's got that little knob to pick. I've never seen that before in these bushel baskets. So please, if you have any information or if you know where Dale is, let's see if we can get this basket back to him. Or probably somebody just went through his stuff and went, this is garbage, get rid of it. And hopefully we can make a good treasure out of it. I did kind of go over his name a little bit with the water to remove it, but you still can see that it says Dale on there. I thought that was kind of a fun little touch to leave there. So you can see that you can still see his name there. It's a little bit wet, so it might be a little bit hard to see on camera, but you can definitely tell that this basket is Dale's. So since I've moved on from doing actually anything to the basket to ruin the integrity of the piece, I've just decided to embrace it as it is and use it as a decorative element. So I'm taking just a dish towel that I have here, and you guys, this mini heat press, I use it all the time for crafting. I was curious if I would ever even use it, and I use it all the time. So I just kind of ironed out a little dish towel. I put some bags in the bottom of the basket to kind of bring up the base so I could use it, put some things in it, and that way they wouldn't sink all the way to the bottom. So I'm just kind of putting this little towel at an angle here, having the cute corner peek out. I'm putting a little bit of greenery in there. I have this as an old like beginning French book that I inherited from a box of stuff from my grandma's house. I don't know if my grandma ever spoke French or not, but she had this book. It was from 1940 was the copyright date on it. And then I have these little bobbin thread here that I'm going to use that I picked up at another antique store that I have a couple of them. And I thought that kind of tied in that wood color of the basket there as well. And so I just kind of stagger those in there, and I thought that brought in such a fun element with a little bit of the metal on there. And then I felt like it needed a little something between there. So this is just a tag that I picked up at Dollar Tree that I had used at Dollar Tree rub-on transfer. And I just kind of had some script on there that I thought was really fun. And so I stuck that in there. And look at how beautiful this is. I mean, I think this is a great way to use a piece like this that you can leave it. Because again, I don't know if this basket is some big piece of history or if it was just something that, you know, who knows, was mass produced at one point or something and is worth nothing, but it's beautiful the way it is. I think if you had a shop or a storefront or something to use something, a piece like this to put some cute little trinkets in would be beautiful. But I think I'm going to have so much fun decorating this for different holidays and different seasons. What do you guys think of this piece? Would you have made the same choice that I made, or would you have just gone ahead and painted it? I'm so excited about this project. So I am taking 2 of these 1/2-inch poplar that you get at Home Depot or Lowe's. You can see that they're like $2.10 for each one, and I'm using 2 of them. Now I'm making a little tea towel ladder to go in my kitchen so I can decorate it for different seasons. So that's how I'm making this one kind of spring, because you can decorate it for the different like seasons or holidays. So I am just cutting them down. I'm going to put the measurements down in my description box. But when I have to cut a couple pieces of wood the same length that are little like this with my miter box, my miter saw, I just take them and tape them together with painter's tape to make sure I get an even cut on both pieces. After I have like the sides of my ladder all the way done, I'm going to cut the rungs. So I cut all 3 of those, and then I am going to kind of space these out, measure them with my ruler to kind of see where I need to space them. And then how I do it is I just use some Dollar Tree wood glue, but I glue the top rung on and then the bottom rung before I place the middle. That way I kind of can get a good idea of where I want to place that middle one, make sure that it's even, rather than marking this up with pencil marks, because I'm going to leave it this natural wood color where this is going to be in my kitchen and it is going to be around food. I didn't want it to have like a finish or anything on there that wasn't food safe. So I didn't want to mark it up with a bunch of pencil marks. And since I'm not using nails or anything on this, just the wood glue, I'm just using a couple of clamps to clamp this together. Now I only have 2 clamps that were big enough for this, and they were sufficient. So I'm just putting them on a couple of the rungs there you can see and just tightening that up. And then I just let this dry. And I am so excited about this because I love having things like this in my kitchen to decorate for different seasons. So I just put this little tea towel on here to show you, but you could jazz it up with a little wreath. You could hang some cute little things from it, have a rolling pin set up next to it, whatever you'd like for the different seasons or holidays, but so simple to make. I found this candle holder pedestal at the thrift store, and I thought it would be a really, really good piece to have. So I kind of thought about what I wanted to, like how I wanted to paint it or what finish I wanted to give it. So I ultimately decided to cover it in complete white chalk paint all over. So it takes about 2 or 3 coats to completely cover it. Now this is glass, it's not metal or anything. So it's not something that I'm going to like put outside or anything, but I wanted it to look kind of garden inspired. Like maybe it was like a piece of wrought iron that had been painted and then was like the wrought iron was starting to show through. So I'm just going in with like some elephant or some dark gray chalk paint to distress this. And it has a little bit of detail on the very top, like the lip around where the candle would sit, that really picked up that detail really well. And then all of the little ridges that are on the base of the candle holder, it really picked up that distressing well. And so I just kind of went in. You can always add more, so go with a little bit and keep adding. And then you can also add some white paint back over the distressing if you feel like you've added too much to tone it down if you want to. I really wanted to make a moss ball to sit on top of this pedestal, and in the floral accents section of my craft store, I found this little like wicker ball almost, and I bought this garland. It was on sale for 50% off, so it was $7.50. If I tried to think of some different ways I could actually make this, like get a form for this moss ball. This was the best that I could come up with for the price. So if you had something on hand already or came up with something else to use as your base, that would work too. But what I'm doing is I just zip tie the end of this garland onto what is going to be the base of my moss ball. And then I wrap it all the way around one way, turn it around and wrap it all the way the other way. So that way it's wrapped around twice and it is like crisscrossing, if that it all makes sense. So it goes like north to south and east to west. Once I zip tie both ends down to where the base of my moss ball is, I am just breaking apart all of these little teeny vines that are coming off and all these little stems, and I am just tucking them into the grapevine on the wicker or the wire, whatever. It's several different elements that are there. So I'm just tucking it in as I go around to make sure that this is completely covered. Now I just picked a greenery, like a garland that had a lot of little leaves like this that would easily tuck in. So if you're going to recreate this, you're just going to look for something that has a lot of long stems that you can stretch around. So you can kind of see how that went all the way around there. Now I'm just taking some jute twine and I'm just going to tie it on the base there. And then I'm going to wrap this around several different ways, directions, everything to hold that moss down. And it also looks like this moss was, that's what's holding it down onto the ball, and that was the look that I'm going for. And I go around maybe like 15 times or more. I mean, it's quite a few times that I go around. And if there's any pieces that are really sticking out that didn't get tucked in, I make sure that the twine is tucking those in as well. You can kind of see, I'll go back over and make sure that that goes on those. And once I get this as wrapped as many times as I want, I'll just cut it off and I'll return back to that place I designated as the bottom of my moss ball. And I will just tie it off in a knot there. And then I go back through, and if there's pieces that need to be tucked in under the twine, I do that. Or if I want to pull them out, because I want it to kind of have like a fluffy feel, I guess would be the best way to describe it. So I go through and you can kind of see me here, I'll pick some out. So that way the twine is a little bit buried inside of there, if that it all makes sense. This is the look once it's finished. I love how this turns out. I have seen these moss balls go for like way more than I paid. I absolutely love how this turns out, and I feel like it has such a good spring and garden vibe. I would definitely love to hear your thoughts on this one down in the comments. I have this little house shape that I picked up on clearance at a little store here we have here in town. Now I know, and look, it was like $1.20 or something like that. It was normally $8. So I got a pretty good deal on it. But you can find these house shapes at Dollar Tree. You can cut your own out of wood, thrifted, lots of fun places. But I do love having these little houses. They're so popular in your decor, and I think that they're just kind of a fun little shelf sitter, a little addition to add. So I'm just going to take off the tags on the back, and then the front had this cute little dog on it. It was, more for like a dog lover. Have this be a lesson to you, though, to check those sections of the clearance areas. And even though maybe you don't have a dog or you don't need something that says how much you love your dog, it's a perfect shape to make into something new. Now I picked up this stencil at Hobby Lobby. You could see I got it for 90% off. It was 22 cents. I love to look for stencils because it's so fun to use them in different things of decor. So I'm just kind of trying to fit this on a little ski wampus on my house here. I did give a fresh coat of paint to the house, so I was working with a nice crisp surface. And then I picked a nice blue color. I felt like this is going to match my home. I just love a good blue and white stencil job. And so I'm just going to pounce up and down with my stencil brush. Some people mentioned swirling motion would work well. This was a very delicate stencil, so I did just kind of stick with the pouncing up and down. But just holding it with my fingers, it didn't have to be perfect because I'm going to distress this pretty good, but I wanted it to be as good a job as I could do. I love a reveal on a stencil. I think it turned out perfectly. I love kind of the asymmetrical way to the design. Now I want this to be kind of faded. It is a darker blue, and I just wanted a really worn look. I love that look, but obviously you could leave this just plain if you wanted. You can see how much I sanded it back. That's just a matter of personal preference, but I think that it looks just like something that's aged and beautiful, and I just love it. Now I'm taking a finger dauber and I'm just putting it in some antiquing wax. A baby wipe would work great to do this. However, I found these finger daubers in at Hobby Lobby, kind of where the distressing ink is, and I've seen a lot of creators use them. I've never seen them at the craft store before, so I picked some up, and I actually kind of like them a little bit better than a baby wipe, especially since you can kind of rinse them and use them again. So haven't used them with the inks yet, but I do like them with the antiquing wax. And I think that using the antiquing wax around the edge is just going to give this a little bit of definition and add another layer of some character to this piece. This is the completed house. I think it's so cute. I contemplated putting like a little hole in it for like a birdhouse, but I ultimately decided not to. I just thought the simplicity of the piece to use in your decor was so nice the way that it was. It's something that kind of is a basic or a staple piece that you can have switch out with different seasons or different vignettes. It's so cute displayed with this bird, but I think that it would be so fun on a tiered tray or something. What do you guys think of this? I was so excited when I saw this piece in the thrift store. It was missing one of its little like hanging knobs there. It was $1.50, I believe, is what I paid on this piece. And it, clearly it's meant to be hung on the wall for you to hang something from, like your aprons or something. I don't know, whatever you use, some cute little decor or something. But it was missing one of the little knobs on it. So I'm just going to remove the others, and I'm going to turn this into a riser. You guys know I love my risers. They're so fun. They're such a great way to bring some different textures into your decorating, and I feel like they're pieces that can be used over and over again. I recently did a bridal shower for my niece, and I took all of my risers, and we had the most beautiful display of food for the table on all these different heights and different things. It was so pretty. So they really do come in handy, and I just love having a lot of them. So it takes just a minute for me to get all of the hardware removed from this. I even removed the pieces where you would hang this because we don't need them there anymore. And I'm going to end up spray painting this so I can get into all those little grooves. Hand painting this I think would be kind of a nightmare, so I didn't want to even go down that road. I'm just taking a little spackling, My spackling is kind of dry. I think I need to get a new tub of it because it was a little bit, but it worked, but it's definitely on its last leg here. But I'm just kind of pushing that down through that opening where the knobs were screwed in. And then I will just let this dry, and then I will go back in and sand it so it's flat. And that's just going to camouflage that hole that was in there from where those little hanging fixtures were. To turn this into a riser, I'm using some little teeny finials. I purchased these on Amazon. I will leave a link to them in my description box. But if you want to make it really easy on yourself, even just some little wood beads, if you have some even from Dollar Tree or something, would work perfect for this. So we're going to paint over them so it could even be like the colored beads from Dollar Tree. But I do love these little finials. I buy them in a pack of like 25 or 50 of them. So I have quite a few, and they just kind of have a little bit of a different shape than a wooden bead, and so it kind of adds just a little bit more embellishment on it than just a plain wooden bead. But again, nobody's going to be turning this over and looking at the back side of it, so you're probably fine to just do what you have. I love this coastal sage color. This is such a beautiful color of spray paint. I couldn't leave this natural because we had to remove that hardware, and so I had to fix with the spackling. So I did need to choose a color, but I think this is going to match my decor so wonderfully, and I think this is a very kind of a neutral color almost in the decor styles that you're seeing today. But look at how pretty this is and how beautiful. I really think this is going to be such a fun riser to have with all of those cutouts and everything. And you can go as simple as you want or as elaborate as you want, even to put like a couple candles on here or have this in your bathroom with some beautiful perfume bottles or something. I just think this is so pretty.
I was at my mother-in-law's the other day, and she had a pile of stuff bound for the thrift store, and this bucket was in there. And so I'm going to call this a thrift flip because it was on its way to the thrift store and I rescued it. So a thrift rescue. Anyhow, it's this darling metal bucket, and the sign on it was really cute. I'm just checking to see if that handle comes off easily at all, which it did not. And you can see the design is very faded. The colors were probably once really bright. And as I was looking at it, I realized, wait a second, this is just paper that's on here. So I did my best to tear as much paper off as I could. I kind of used my putty knife to go around. There was like a little ridge around the base and the top of the bucket. You can kind of see those there. And I just kind of went with my putty knife to kind of perforate the paper there so I could tear it off as easily as I could, which honestly was not very easy. It was kind of hard to get off. So I just kind of had this idea, I'm going to get as much off as I can or perforate it as much. And then all I did is I went and I ended up soaking this in a sink full of water, like my kitchen sink, for probably about an hour. And this is after that, and so I'm just going to show you that it starts to come off pretty easily as I rub it with my finger. So I just take the putty knife again, and I'm just going to peel up as much as I can. And it does a pretty decent job this time of getting being able to scrape it off, but there was still a little bit. You'll even see some areas like you can tell that the water didn't even touch it because the paper was so adhered and water couldn't touch it. And so I had to end up soaking it again. Some of it just peeled off so easy, that top layer did, but you can kind of see in the center there, that's where that little dry spot was. So I took my sander, sanded it a little bit to kind of help break up any more of the paper that was on there. And then I took it back to my kitchen sink and let it soak maybe for 10 or 15 minutes. All I did there, which I'm sorry I don't have footage from in my kitchen, was I just took a sponge, and on the scrubby side of the sponge just kind of went around all of these areas that you can see here. I actually was thinking this looks kind of cute, like the way it was there, but I just kind of scrubbed all of that off with that side of the sponge, and it came right off. And there was a few little areas when I got it back down into my craft studio, so I just used a baby wipe to wipe those off. Now, this is my first time ever using Dixie Belle paint. I found a cute little antique store in my neck of the woods that had a booth that had a bunch of different Dixie Belle paints, and I have seen a lot of different crafters use it, and I had never tried it. So I found this duck egg color, which I absolutely love, and so I thought this would be the perfect project to try this on. I'm kind of going for a vibe of like a French flower tin here, and so you'll kind of, hopefully I achieve that, or you think that I do. I love how it turns out. So I'm just very careful to go around the hardware on where the handle is, because I do like that color, kind of the rusty metal color there showing through. So I'm just very careful as I go around the edge of that, and I'm just using my heat tool between layers because you can see how fast it dries when you're using your heat tool. So you can move right on, and honestly, it didn't like crack or anything like that. This paint is very well. I definitely can see why a lot of crafters gravitate to this paint, and I can also see why it is a little bit more expensive than your typical chalk paint. I was very pleased with it, and I'm excited to try some different colors and maybe even some furniture projects with this. If you guys would like to see some furniture flips or furniture makeovers, let me know down in the comments, because I love doing furniture pieces and I haven't done a lot of them on my channel because I normally do a little bit smaller craft items. But if you guys would be interested in that, definitely let me know down in the comments, because I would love to start showing you guys some of those. Now, it took a couple of coats of paint to get the color that I wanted on there, the coverage I wanted. And I apologize that I realized I had not filmed me doing this whole stencil process, but I'm just using this little stencil foam thing from Dollar Tree, and I'm just using some black chalk paint and pouncing up and down. I kind of swirl it a little bit to get into those letters. This stencil just came from Dollar Tree. You could make your own stencil, use whatever, but I thought it would be so cute to put fleurs on there. I hope I said that correctly. I do not speak French, but that is French for flowers. I do know that, but I just thought that would be so cute, especially since I was going for the French vibe with it. And I end up putting some darling hydrangeas in it, and I just think it looks so cute. But I kind of take a little brush here. First, you guys, do you remember that sign I made a couple of weeks ago with the black paint on there, and I made the mistake of sanding it and it made the whole project turn black? I almost did the same thing with this one and was like, I caught myself and went, oh no. When you're doing black, don't sand over it to distress it, because it will turn everything black. You're going to distress it with the same color of your base paint. And you'll see me do that in a minute. But I just take a little detail brush and I kind of close in from that stencil there. I didn't really know how it was going to look. I don't know if it would make a difference, but I did it anyway, so that way you can kind of see that F and that E there. I just kind of made it look so it wasn't so apparent that it was a stencil. Anyhow, then I just take do a dry brush technique, and I just take a stencil brush or a chip brush. Apparently I'm going to dry that off first there. Here we go. And I put a little bit of that duck egg on it and then dab it off on like a paper towel or a baby wipe, and then lightly go over, because I wanted this to look faded and aged. And so I didn't want that black to be, you can kind of see here after I go a couple of times, it starts to have that more faded look. I probably could have started with like a dark gray, like an elephant color chalk paint or something like that. Might have even helped the process a little bit faster, but I kind of kept going until I got the desired effect. Now I took some apple barrel burnt umber paint, which gives a great rust color if you're kind of wanting to do a quick rust look. Now, I've done lots of different rust techniques. There's the cinnamon technique. There's the technique where you use baking soda. Different times that I've used like different colors of paints to get more of a authentic rust color look. This one I was just kind of going for, let's just make this quick and easy, and that burnt umber totally achieved what I wanted it to. So I'm just kind of dabbing it in natural places where the bucket would have aged as it was sitting out in the weather. You know, I like to make up backstories for my pieces as I'm making them, that this is just a forgotten bucket here that maybe has been repurposed for a flower bucket there. The French countryside, all of those thoughts go through my head as I'm making my projects. So I'm just taking along the edges on the bottom and then around the hardware from that handle. And I love the wood handle that was on here, so I feel like it really just kind of fits in. And I didn't have to do anything to the inside of this bucket. It actually looked really good the way that it was. Now, less is more when it comes to the rusting, so you can see here how everything looks together. Those white hydrangeas, I feel like, set this off. You could even drill a couple holes in the bottom and plant a real hydrangea in there if you wanted to do that. This way I can use this inside or out, but I think this will look darling on my porch this summer. This is such an easy and fun DIY or hack. It could even be free depending on what you have on hand. I wanted to have a spring type of book stack, so I just went through my books and found some that had some covers that were kind of spring cheerful colors. And then I'm just taking some spring colored scrapbook paper to use to make little dust jackets for these books here for this book stack. So I picked kind of a green colored one, a florally one, and then one that had some vintage labels on it. I just kind of eyeballed where I wanted the paper to fit on my book, and then just drew a straight line so I could have these be as straight as possible. Now, when you're taping these on, all I use is just some Scotch tape. That way I can remove these. I can put the dust covers back on, put them back on my bookshelf when I'm done, or I can change these out for different seasons and have different types of scrapbook paper on them. This is such a fun little way to do this.
Now your paper is not going to cover your entire book, and that is just fine because this is going to be stacked up one to another like the book, so you're not going to be able to see that the paper doesn't cover all the area of the book. Now, as you can see with this one, I kind of chose what design I wanted to show on the spine of the book, and then I just taped the paper accordingly, so that way when you see the spine of the book with that design on there, it's exactly what I want to have showing. This is also something you could keep in mind when you are maybe thrifting, looking for some books with some specific colors to their cover, or maybe antiquing. If you're anything like me, you may have a whole ton of books in your house that you could look for to do this with. I just found some that was like a gray color, a turquoise color, and a white color. Those were honestly like the most springy colors that I could find to use. I had one extra, but I ended up not using it because I liked the 3. But you could do a stack of 2, you could do a stack of 7 or 8, however many you wanted to use. You can see here the spine of mine, how they look. I think they look super cute, super springy and fresh. And then I'm just taking some ribbon to tie my book stack together. Since I'm going to be using my stack more as a riser on a shelf here, I don't need to tie a bow on there. I don't need to have any florals glued to the top or anything. So I'm just gluing my ribbon down onto the scrapbook paper. That way, when it's time to remove the paper from these, the books are not damaged. You can return the dust covers, put them back on your bookshelf and move on, or you can easily change the ribbon or paper out for different seasons and different holidays. I just make sure that I pull the ribbon really taut, and then I'm going to just glue the ribbon onto itself so that way it's nice and secured and I have a nice surface to work with. So here's what it looks like from the top that you'll be able to see. So that top is completely covered there, and those are the spines of the books there. And then you'll just use it to stack some things on there and have as a beautiful shelf sitter. Such a fun and great hack. Again, you probably can just find supplies around your home that you have to do this with and make a beautiful stack for, like I said, you can use this for different seasons or different holidays. My mind is already going with ways to do this for like 4th of July or fall or Christmas, and just have a fun way to display these. What do you guys think of this hack? Do you like it? Are you going to try it? Speaking of books, I am always looking for book recommendations. If you have a book that you've read that you absolutely love, let me know down in the comments so me and other readers can look through the comments and find some good book recommendations.
I picked this basket up when I very first started my channel a few years ago, and it's been sitting waiting for the perfect project, and I felt like it was time to redo this. So I'm just wiping it off really good, and I'm also going to sand the edges because they were a little rough. And that way it's not going to be super rough. It'll be a little smooth. I just didn't want to get any slivers or anything, to be totally honest with you. This basket is beautiful, but the color is just not something that I have in my decor, that kind of almost like orangey look tone to it. So I thought I would totally paint this. Now, spray paint might have been a better way to go. I'm not 100% sure. I just kind of started painting it with my chalk paint, and I used this chip brush to do it, which a chip brush just has those natural bristles in it there. So you may get a bristle or two to come out, but it's very good for distressing and adding texture, which is definitely what I wanted. So I paint the entire thing white. It did take a couple of coats. It did take a little bit of time. And I'm just going to take some painter's tape here because I really wanted to add a stripe to it. You guys know I love to add stripes to things, and so I thought this basket would be the perfect thing to do that with. So I just taped off a little area. I was just kind of eyeballing what would probably look the best. And I'm taking my vintage duck egg from Dixie Belle. But of course, when you're doing your projects, you're going to be matching your decor. So definitely pick a color that would be, even just a plain gray, I think would be really pretty and really basic if you wanted to, or even like a cashew type color would be really pretty. So just a little color, but not a lot, something to add a little variation. But it's very easy on the basket here to kind of go over the areas with that tape there. The tape does a really good job as far as being a barrier. And I feel like where you have the weave of a basket, you've got a little bit of a buffer there in case you did go outside of the lines a little bit. But you can see it turns out pretty cute. And on the top, I couldn't come up with a good way to space my stripes, and so in the end this is kind of what I came up with, and it did end up looking really good. You'll see here, but I mean it's not the most even of stripes, but I distress it so it looks okay. No, I do go in and distress it though, because I really did want to have that really aged look to this. That little bit of like this piece came from being around a really long time, has lots of stories to tell. And so I'm just going over with my fingernail file to really get that rustic look to this. And I even go over the basket part here, and you can see where all the weave of the basket is. It really does pick up that sanding and adds that really good texture for that distressed look. And I take my time and go through all the pieces. And on the white pieces, I will even sand those down to reveal some of the original color. And then I just take a baby wipe and wipe the entire thing down because you get a lot of dust and everything. And I even did the handles. You can kind of see I distressed around the edges of the handles. This piece distressed up so nicely, but I think it turns out so beautiful. I feel like this has such a good French country vibe to me. I love it. It looks like it could just be maybe even like an old sewing basket that like your great grandma maybe had, or just some piece. I don't know. I think this turned out so beautiful, and I'm excited to use it in my home. And I will definitely use this one much more than I will the original color that I came.
This was the perfect craft my stash item for me, and I have a bunch of Hobby Lobby clearance items that I just keep a big bin of. You guys know I'm a big fan of checking out that sale section at Hobby Lobby, and I had this sign that came from there that was like, I can't remember what the price tag just said on there, $1.50 or something. And then I have this candlestick, which is concrete. It was very heavy, and I knew when I bought it that I wanted to do some type of riser with it. So I'm just showing you guys, look, I'm actually measuring something. I don't measure anything, so I really had to point out that I actually tried with this one. I just found the center and then traced around that. Now I have this big long piece of trim. This just came from my hardware store. You can just buy it down where the like your baseboards, they'll have like trim on that aisle too. And I've made several projects out of using this. So I just cut it at a 45-degree angle. I measured the size that I needed, and I did just use my hand saw. I didn't use like a table saw or anything to do this. I just used my miter box, like little miter box table saw. Hand saw, excuse me, to do that, which I'll have linked down in my description box because I love using that. So, and it's very simple. And then I just measured these to be a little bit less than what the sign was because I wanted them to be a little bit of trim here, because that is going to be the flat part of my riser. And then I just used some super glue to glue these down. Hot glue would probably work, but I just felt like super glue was going to give me a closer fit, and it was going to work a little bit better over time. So that was why I chose to do that. Now the sign has a little bit of raised text, and this is the type of super glue that I work with all the time, so I'm just showing either of these. Now the sign had a little bit of a raised area. I should have sanded that off, but I didn't realize at the time it was going to be an issue, so I'm just pointing that out now. Now I'm just using some E6000 and some hot glue in the areas where the E6000 is not, so that can kind of give me the quick hold, and then the E6000 can dry and give me the permanent hold. Now, of course, as I'm gluing this on right now, I'm realizing that I forgot to take the price tags off of the back. So I do go in and take that off so you can't see it, but remove that beforehand. But for some reason, it just didn't dawn on me until after I glued it down, and I went, whoops. So I spray painted this outside because it's finally warm enough to spray paint at my house. And I'm just showing that on these edges here, we're going to put some antiquing wax to get in all of the little grooves of those pieces. Now, those trim pieces are completely optional. If you don't want to mess around with having to go get something extra, or you don't want to cut anything, I get it. Totally optional, just a different thing of decoration. I just kind of love embellishing things in different ways. So you can see that I put a pretty heavy coat of antiquing wax on this trim here, and then wiped it off, so it just kind of helped pop all of those little nooks and crannies there. It kind of helps to see the detail. And then I do brighten up the top of it with a little bit of chalk paint dry brushing over it. And then here I'm just distressing the edges with some antiquing wax around the whole thing to kind of give it that aged look. So not just the trim was aged with the antiquing wax. So I just go around all of the edges. I also go around on the candlestick portion. I don't think I show that on here, but I did do that. So look at how absolutely darling this looks. I think this is beautiful. I really think that trim sets this off. Now I really wanted to do something extra here. So to put on the top of it, I've seen like rustic metal pieces on the top of risers. So I bought this at the wedding section at Hobby Lobby, which is the best kept secret Hobby Lobby has for crafters, is the wedding section. Always check there. This was like, I can't even remember how much it said, $1.50 I think it said on this little tin bucket here. And I'm using just some regular like white vinegar, just the kind you buy in the big jug. I use it like in my dishwasher to help my dishes, and some paper towels. I'm trying to age this. I've never done this process before, so this was totally new to me. So I soaked all of these paper towels very liberally in the vinegar, and I am just putting them all around the metal on here. And I read this on Pinterest to do this. I've also seen some other crafters do this on a smaller scale with like safety pins and bells and things. And so I'm just like, you can see here, I'm just going to set that down. And I did this, was probably about noon that I put this on here. And I came and checked this. This is probably about 5 in the afternoon or the evening. And you can see how much rust is showing on here now and how it's dulled down that shininess on here. And I decided at this point that I want a little more rust. I mean, you could easily leave it like this, but I mean, this is like 5 to 6 hours or something. So I put it all back on, and then I leave it overnight. So if you really want it to be really rusty, do this and leave it for 24 hours and see what happens here. So this is the next day. I'm taking this out, and you can see the paper towels are showing like tons of rust there, and you can see how aged that gets. Now I think because I placed the paper towels so close to it that maybe if I'd let a little oxygen get in there, the reaction might have happened a little bit more on the things. But I mean, I'm extremely happy for my first time with how this came out, and it was such a fun process to do. It does smell like vinegar, so keep it in your garage if it's gonna bother you. Mine was just in my basement, and really I couldn't smell it unless I was right next to it. So I'm cleaning off the bottom because my intention was to glue it to the top of this riser. And this is what I would have used to do that, and some hot glue for the temporary hold, and then either super glue or E6000 for that permanent hold. But I decided not to do that. So I'm just showing you that that's how you would glue it on. But I thought the versatility would be much greater to leave it not glued to it. So here it is just on its own. It's darling. It definitely has that farmhouse look. I mean, I'm thinking next, I'm like, I want to get a big Rubbermaid bin to do this in with some watering cans or something. But here it is on top of the riser. I think it looks darling on there. What do you guys think of this process? Is that something that you would try?
I loved this little basket when I saw this little galvanized bucket here. I thought the handle on it was beautiful. And I also found this piece right here. And so I think one of them was like $1.50. The other one was about $3 for this piece with all these little bulb flowers in there. Now, this piece with these little flowers in there, I did not love the vase together with these. I felt like it was a little too tall, and I didn't love the color of the vase. It's a little bit more like heavy European feeling for like this style in my home. So I thought it would be really fun to transfer these flowers and put them into this cute little galvanized bucket here. I thought that would be really fun and make it a lot less formal than it was. So that's kind of the look that I'm going for here. So now I'm going to take this pot. I'm leaving all this styrofoam in it. It's glued in there pretty good, but I'm just going to set that aside. I'll have that for a future project to work with. And now I'm just going to focus on my little pail bucket here, whatever we want to call it. So I'm taking some floral foam here, and I'm just leaving it in the plastic. I learned this trick years ago. If you can leave that floral foam in that plastic, your cleanup is going to be so much easier. This stuff has the most like gritty feel. It gets everywhere, but I do have to use an open piece here in a moment. I'll show you. But I'm just rolling this around on my table to kind of smush down the edges so that way it will fit into my bucket here. I just want there to be a flat surface all the way across, because where I have the bottom of these flowers is a bulb, I wanted them to be able to be seen and not like be down into the bucket at all. So you can see here, I just had to take a little bit of the floral foam that was open, and then I just had to cut it to size to kind of slip in that negative space there.
I really did love that these flowers, and I don't even know what kind of flowers these are. Even looking at them right now, I can't. You guys, if you know what kind of flowers these are, let me know down in the comments, because I can't tell. They don't look like buttercups. I'm not really sure, but they're beautiful, whatever they are. But I just love that bulb look to them. And as you can see kind of at the top of my screen there was also like some faux like roots that came that I can kind of have draping out of this, which were so cute. I just loved the natural feel of all of this. So I have a very specific like way I'm putting these in. I have like a specific front and back, and I'm trying to put like the largest kind of in the middle and taper them down so that way it looks very uniform. You guys have heard me before in here. I'm not a florist. I've had no special training. I just do what looks good and feels good to me and where it's going in my home. Yours may look completely different than how I do mine. But I will tell you that I spend so much time right here doing this, and I have to undo it in just a moment. So what I do to cover up that floral foam is I have a bunch of moss that I purchased at just the craft store. And this is where I'm realizing that my bucket handle was on different. So I have to take everything out, flip the bucket handle over, because like I said, there was a specific front and a specific back, and I wanted that handle to be seen in the front. So I had to kind of take these out. But I have some moss, different kinds of moss in a bag that I got at Hobby Lobby. And it looked kind of almost like dirt to me. And so I'm using that along with some reindeer moss that I got at Dollar Tree. And I'm just going all the way around this entire surface of the bucket on top of that floral foam and covering everything so you cannot see the floral foam and you can't see like the fact that they're like fake flowers, like it leaves the bulb there, but I kind of even tuck that moss underneath them. And I just use a little bit of hot glue as I go along doing this. And I even use like a bamboo skewer to help me put everything down in between all those little hard to get areas, and that way I don't burn my fingers, and it's really nice to get that reach in between all of the flowers. I really love how this came out. This is a look at everything when it's all finalized and together. I really love the informalness of that pail there, like the galvanized metal. I loved how it was already distressed like this. It kind of has that nice little farmhouse feel to it, Euro cottage look. It feels like you did just kind of take these and planted them in this little pail, and oh, look what grew up here. I just think it's really cute, and it's neutral enough that it'll match a lot of different decor styles, and I think it's going to be so cute in my home. What do you guys think of this? And if you know what kind of flowers these are, let me know. I have a series of frames that I have picked up through thrift stores, flea markets, garage sales over the years. And so I'm taking 3 of them to do this project with. This one was already kind of a cream colored, but I wanted it to be more of a bright white. So I am going over it with the linen white chalk paint by Rust-Oleum. And I just go through and give the entire frame a really good coat of that to brighten it up. Then I just take a baby wipe, and you could use a tissue, anything, and just kind of rub off the raised area of this to kind of expose that through and look aged. Then I'm taking this pink frame. I picked this up at a thrift store years ago. It hung in my daughter's room for a while, but she's just kind of over the color pink now, so I'm gonna make it farmhouse. So I just give this a really good, it takes a couple coats to cover that pink. That pink was really dark and really bright. So I just go through and cover all of this with the Waverly, this is not Waverly, it's Rust-Oleum linen white. After I get the desired amount of coats of the white paint on, I take a baby wipe and I use some elephant chalk paint by Waverly, and I go through and rub it and dab it kind of on the raised areas of this frame. This is what's going to age and make this look weathered. And I just go through until I get it how I want that, light in some areas, darker in other areas. And then I go back in with the chalk paint and I just lightly brush over the top to kind of dull it down a little bit and make it look like it's kind of that layered look where it is kind of aged in the crevices and everything. And I just go over this and keep repeating the process until I get what I want. With this last frame, this frame is huge, guys. I don't know if you can fully get how big this is, but I had to zoom way out. But it is cracked in areas. The print is very faded and damaged. And so this is a very nice painting as I was tearing this apart. This is so sturdy, but I had to rip everything out so I could get the print out of the middle. So I just kind of went to town and ripped the back completely off. And then I pried open the little prongs here so I could get the print out. You can see that the print is faded. It's got some permanent scuffs and marks on it. It's just not my style, so I decided that I'm going to try something else with it. So I do go over this frame. This also took several coats to get it to the desired white color that I wanted, but I just used the chalk paint. And then to age this one, I go through with my emery board and I sand all over, kind of on the raised edges, and then I will kind of go in on the flat parts and I will really kind of scuff it up a little bit. I really wanted this to look very, very chippy. I'm going for just that really chippy white look with all of my projects today. One of my daughter's books had been ripped and torn in several pieces, and so I kept part of it that was still salvageable, and I'm using that to cut out some little scalloped pieces. And what I'm going to do is Mod Podge these over the back of the print that was in the picture. So I start by just putting a line of Mod Podge down and kind of spreading that out. This is very simple, very basic. You just take each little scalloped piece and I'm going to place it down and that way, and I just kind of go through in layers. I do like this row and then I move on to the next row and get it so it's completely covered. And then I kind of offset the next row. You can see me do that here. So I just lay another row of the Mod Podge down and then go in between the scalloped layers on that other edge. And I do this through the whole thing. I do go over the edges, as you can see, on the sides and the top and the bottom, and I'll go through and cut those off once I'm done. And then after I get this all trimmed up, I do just slide it back into the frame and get it all pressed down in there. And you can kind of see what it looks like there. It just adds a little bit of texture element to it. I am so excited to put these frames in my house. I think they look so great. They're so farmhouse. I think that the chippiness on them is perfect, the aging and the weathering. I really do like how the pages that I cut, the scalloped edges out, look in the back of that big frame. It was rather empty to not have anything in there, and I feel like that was the perfect thing to add in there to keep it kind of that really simple, clean white look. So let me know if you guys have ever done anything with old frames like this down in the comments. I would love to know what you guys have done with them. This project is so easy, I think anyone can do this. This just takes a little piece of wood that I have here. Mine is probably about 14 to 16 inches long, but you can make it any length or any width that you would like. Now, if you remember, we had a barn that we tore down, so I have a lot of salvaged barn wood that we have sitting in our garage. And so my projects all today use that, but you can use any type of salvaged wood or any type of wood that you would like. I just got this fabric at Joann's. It just reminded me that it was very farmhouse with that little almost like ticking stripe through it. I really liked it. And so what I'm doing is I just cut it down to the size that I needed for my board. And I am just kind of tearing off the sides, like pulling those little threads out to kind of fray the edges, to kind of give it a little bit of, you know, a worn out look, I guess. And so just on the sides, I do that with all of the sides that I can. I don't really need to on the bottom because I'm going to be gluing some beads along the bottom. So I just hot glue this to my piece of wood. We're just making a little pocket here because we're going to stick some florals in there. So I used my little brayer and immediately realized probably not the smartest idea because it kind of made the fabric ruffle up. So just kind of lightly press it with your fingers. It will seep through the fabric a little bit, so just be careful. Use finger protectors if you're worried about that. But I just go around 3 edges, the 2 sides and the bottom, to make sure that it is adhered really good. This is why I frayed those edges, is because they're going to be showing there, and so I just wanted them to kind of look like it was an intentional, like, worn out look. Now I have these wooden half beads from Amazon, and they will be linked down in my description box. These are the smaller, like a really small size, so I'll try and link the size down there of these, because I buy these and I buy the little bit bigger size, but these I want to say, I don't really even know, 8mm maybe. I'll check and I'll put that down in my description box. But I just put them in a little Ziploc baggie there, and then I just put a little bit of antiquing wax and I spray some water, and I'm just kind of gonna zhuzh these around, get them all kind of stained there. Doesn't have to be perfect or exact. Remember, we're doing a farmhouse look here. Everything's kind of supposed to look salvaged. So, and this step would be completely optional. I just thought it kind of dressed it up a little bit. After you dump those out, I just dump them on a baby wipe. I pat them down with a paper towel or another baby wipe to get all the excess wax off of them. And now I'm just taking my heat gun and I will just kind of dry them off a little bit. Now you can space these out in any length that you want. You could even just put one on each of the four corners, would look cute. I kind of just went around all of the edges, kind of spacing them maybe like a ½ inch. I just kind of eyeballed it, and you can kind of see it's not exactly perfect, but that's okay. It doesn't need to be, so just know that. Now I have these florals that are from Dollar Tree. I just love this little, I'm not even sure what this is called. I should have looked at the tag, but I think it drooping over just really adds something to it. I love it. And then I have these two other little spring kind of purpley colored on the floral there, and I just thought those looked great. Now I thought the front looked a little bare, but this is completely optional. You would not have to do this. It's not bare enough that it's going to be like stark bare, but I decided to make a little sign to go on the top. So this is just a plank of wood from a pack that you get at Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to add some chalk couture stenciling to it. Now you certainly don't have to do chalk couture on this. That is just what I chose because I am fairly new to it and I am loving everything about it so far. But if you had a cutting machine, you could easily use that. You could use stencils, you could use rub-on transfers, water slide decals, print on tissue paper. There are so many options now to do different types of designs on things that you're not just kind of like cemented into one idea or out of luck if you don't have one particular way of doing things. This particular transfer came from Chalk Couture's monthly club that you subscribe to, and they send you a transfer every month. If you want more information about that, check my description box down below or just message me. I'll be happy to answer any questions. But I just took the word farm and sweet and did farm sweet farm with that adorable windmill. I thought that looked so cute. Now I'm just sanding around all of the edges, and I sand the front of that design because I want it to look weathered and worn out. Then I just take a baby wipe, put it on my finger, and get a little bit of antiquing wax and just kind of run it over all of the edges and all of the corners. Where you sand it off, I sanded off that paint that I had painted this with. That wood is just going to allow that wax to seep into it and give it that really aged look. And then I just take some hot glue and I just glue this onto the front. Now, again, this step is completely optional, but I just really think it adds a lot to it. I think it turns out beautiful. I love how this looks. You can add a little thing on the back to hang this with if you wanted to even like staple some twine into it or something, or rope, or hang it that way, or just use it to prop up against like a backsplash in a kitchen or on a shelf somewhere. I love how this turned out. Please let me know what you think of this one down in the comments. I love the look of this little frosted glass lantern from Kirkland's and thought I could easily recreate something similar with this glass little jar that I found at Dollar Tree. Now this does have this little twine around the top of it, and so I'm going to leave that rather than try to find anything since it's all kind of like a one-stop shop thing with this, if that makes sense. So I'm just using my little heat tool to remove that sticker from the bottom, and then I'm just going to wipe it off and get it all cleaned up. I will also take this little twine off now because I'm going to frost the glass on this little lantern. I will be replacing that once this process is done. So there is a little bit of glue on the sides of the lip of the jar there, so I just use my heat tool to get that completely cleaned off so that way the glass is completely clean. To frost this, I'm just using this Rust-Oleum frosted glass spray. I have never used this before, so this was the first time, and I absolutely love the process. I just took this out into my little spray paint studio in my garage. It's just a giant box that I have so it doesn't get all over everything. And I just give this about 3 really light coats. I just go in just a typical spray paint motion, you know, just little small bursts, stay about 12 inches away. Let it thoroughly dry in between each layer. This is so satiny. The finish is so beautiful. It is so smooth, and I love how this turns out. This is definitely a hit, and I will be using this frosted glass from Rust-Oleum much more often. This is not sponsored or anything by them. I just ended up really liking this product. So I'm just going to replace this little twine back on here, and I am going to have that little handle, get that put into place as well. So I just use a little bit of glue. That's how it was originally affixed to the jar. So after I kind of get all of my measurements down here, I don't really measure anything. You guys know that. I just kind of eyeball it, and then I'm just going to hot glue where I want the pieces to be, and then I will be able to have that little handle to hang my lantern from. After I have glued into place where my little handle is, I'm just going to wrap around the rest of that twine, and I will just kind of tuck the pieces under and glue that. You can kind of watch how I do that here if you decide to recreate this. Now, if you want to go for this same vibe and you don't want to spray paint it, you could easily just go look for this lantern at Dollar Tree. It would be super cute. Of course, I found that on Kirkland's, and then I saw this at Dollar Tree and thought, oh my gosh, this is the perfect opportunity to try and frost glass, since I've never actually done that. And I just love how it turns out. But you can kind of see I'm just going to tuck that back under. Now, I could have easily gone and thought of something else to do to make more of a wood type of handle on this, but I thought it was just easier to do it this way, and I got the same feel and the same look from this. So now I'm just going to take a couple of these little tea lights. These also came from Dollar Tree. You just pull the little tab out and they light up, and I end up putting 2 of them in there to add a little bit more light. Here's a quick look at our inspiration piece that was from Kirkland's, and then here is the piece that I recreated. I really think this turned out great. You're going to get that same feel and that same vibe from this lantern. I love how that frosted spray paint turned out, and this really was just a couple of dollars, which is a fraction of the price from the original Kirkland's version. What do you guys think of this? Do you like how it turned out? Would you try that frosted glass after seeing this? I loved how it turned out. When I saw this vase at my thrift store, I knew I had to have it. I did not love that caramel toffee color of it, but it had a great shape, and I really thought that I could take it from this Venetian look to make it more of like a French farmhouse look. Now, I easily could have spray painted this, which would have been probably a little bit easier, but the day that I was painting this, it was very cold outside. I was not able to get out and spray paint, so I just decided to use some chalk paint. So just so you know, there's different options if you're not able to spray paint or if you prefer to do that. But this one, I went back and forth between using the little sponge brush there and just a chip brush, whichever was giving me better coverage. There was a lot of little like pock marks almost in this, like little indents and stuff that I needed to kind of zhuzh that paint into to make sure that I had the full coverage that I wanted. So it did take a minute to kind of get this covered, but I really like how the coverage turns out. It's so fun to be able to get something from a thrift store and tailor it to your decorating style with colors or different types of things. So just know you can customize anything like this to match your decor. Now, I first started sanding this because it has all these little raised areas on it, and I thought I would try and sand it. And as you can see, it literally was like eating my sandpaper. And I didn't want it really to ruin my fingernail files if it was doing this just the sandpaper, because those are a little bit expensive, the kind that I buy. So I ended up going to chalk paint, like an elephant color chalk paint or just like a gray color, and I would dip my finger with a baby wipe on it into a little bit of the paint and then lightly brush over each of those raised areas. I did like how this looked, but I actually wanted a little bit of a deeper, like more, have that pop a little bit more, if that makes sense. So I eventually switch what I'm doing. I go all over like this, and you could leave it just like this. Now, if I wanted it to sand a little better, what I should have done was put wax on all those raised areas or on different areas, so when I went to wipe it off or sand, that paint would come off easier. So that was the mistake that I made with sanding, so just in case you want to know that. But what I ended up doing is just taking a chip brush, and I'll just dip it in the gray paint. I kind of take a little bit off of it by putting it on a paper towel, and then I lightly go over those raised areas. And I really like the way that this distresses it, and this comes out and brings all of those little raised details, how it makes those all pop, and it gives it that very vintage, aged look. I love that. I think this turns out absolutely beautiful. It is so fun to be able to change out the different florals for different seasons. It is neutral enough that it can be for everyday decor. I love how this turns out, and I loved how the detail ends up looking. What do you guys think of this little vase here? Do you like it better when it was the caramely color, or do you like it better now? I found this picture on Kirkland's website and I thought it was so cute, and it reminded me of some items that I had. So I have this little white pitcher here that I used to display some flowers in. You can find these very inexpensively at IKEA, Target, Hobby Lobby, anywhere like that. But I have these little rub-on decals from Dollar Tree, and I'm just showing you that I had cut the wreath portion out to do in other DIYs, and I have all of these little remaining leaves and petals or whatever these are right here, these little stems. And I thought I would use these to kind of recreate the look on this picture. So I'm just cutting each of these individually out. Now these rub-on transfers came from Dollar Tree. I know you can get some on Amazon. I'm not sure that I've seen them necessarily in the craft stores. If you have seen them like at Michael's or Hobby Lobby or Joann's, I would love to know like in what area you found them, because I haven't really had success in finding them there. But I'm starting with the bigger pieces that I have, and I'm just kind of going to lay these down, and then I just take a craft stick or like a popsicle stick type thing, and I'm just going to gently rub on all of the surface area of this, and it is going to transfer this little leaf pattern here onto my picture. These transfer quite easily, and if you ever have an instance where you pull back that layer sheet like I did just there and some of the transfer starts to come off, you just lay it back down and do your little craft stick over the top of it to transfer, and it is quite easy to do, and you can't tell that there was like any type of break or anything in the pattern. So now the process of this is just finding a spot for all of these little transfers here. So I just kind of went around in different areas very randomly and just decided to start sticking some things on here. This was I'll kind of speed this up a little bit here, but it was kind of just a process of turning my picture this way and that way, finding different shapes. I tried to start with the bigger ones and then go to the next size down. But if I ever saw a spot that I'm like, oh, this is a perfect to tuck this little design into. To me, I've had a lot of these rub-on transfers left over for like the last year from using that darling little wreath in the middle of this design. And so I was looking for the perfect project to use all of these little ferns and little branches and everything on, leaves, whatever they are. And this was once I saw this on Kirkland's, I knew that I had to do this and that this was the perfect project to do. And this maybe took like 20 minutes to do. It wasn't a long project at all, and it was super easy, and I think it turns out extremely cute. So here is the original Kirkland's inspiration piece here, and then here is the picture that I created. I love how it turns out. It's going to be perfect to put some florals in, and I think it's going to be the perfect addition to my farmhouse kitchen.
I have seen these darling honey jars that are kind of this white finish with kind of a rustic look to them. You can see here they have this embossed detail, and I really wanted to create something of my own like this. And I have this darling honey jar. This was a gift from a good friend of mine. Thank you, Rachel. And she gave it to me for my birthday last year, and it was filled with local honey, which of course was delicious, but very soon gone because we love to eat honey and love to use that as a sweetener in our home. And it had this darling embossing on it, and I thought this would be perfect to kind of dupe those other honey jars and use this to do that. My friend was so sweet when she gave this to me. She said she picked this jar out specifically because she knew I would do some fun DIY with it. So I totally have her permission to paint over this jar. Now, I just put some white chalk paint over this. This is just folk art white chalk paint, and I gave it 2 or 3 good coats. You can put a layer of Mod Podge down if you want, but if you're doing that many coats, it's not really necessary. Now, I'm just taking my emery board to go over that raised detail. I'm starting out very lightly. I like using the emery board because you can use like the little end pieces of it to get in those really small nooks and crannies and do the really detailed area there to make that contrast. And I really just love how this contrast ends up looking on this. Now, I've since learned that these type of honey jars are called, and I'm probably going to butcher how you say this, but a muth jar. It's spelled M-U-T-H. I had no idea. We kept bees for a couple of years, and we had never used any jars like this. We always just used mason jars. So I really love the vintage feel seal on these jars, and it looked so beautiful with the honey in it. But I'm going to be absolutely honest with you, it was like the most impractical way to like actually use honey on a daily basis. It was actually kind of hard. It was to get it out of here because the opening was so small that you couldn't really stick a knife down in there easy to get it out. It wasn't like a squeeze jar. With my mason jars, the openings are really wide. So I was very happy to kind of redo this and have it just be a decorative piece. Now, as you can see here, I'm looking at this on that neck of that jar with the space where that cork is. There was a little bit of a space there, and I thought I would try this buffalo check ribbon. Now, I didn't actually love the look of that because it wasn't kind of the feel I was going for. I do love the classic buffalo check with the bee theme. I think is very cute and very a very cute look. But I wanted something a little more like dainty or cottagecore. So I have this lace ribbon from Hobby Lobby, and it is from the wedding section, but it has an adhesive back. And so it is so easy to use. And I'm just putting that around here, and I'll just cut it off to size, and you don't have to glue it down or anything. It's very easy to remove if I decide I don't like it there. But I really think this looks so cute. And then also the jar has like this little arch detail as you see all around the different edges. I also distressed each of the edges to kind of give it all that worn look. And I just thought that made it so you could see all of those letters so much better on there, the contrast. I put a little twine and a little twine bow. It's just a matter of personal preference how you embellish this, but I'm really pleased with how this comes out. It's going to be the perfect little decor piece for a bee vignette here. I love the detail on the jar and how that came out with that little bit of distressing. Do you guys think this came out really well? Would you use this in your bee decor?
So I am taking these little wood planks that I got from Dollar Tree. They come in a package of like 5 or 6 of them. So I am taking 4, and I am going to glue them together to make almost like a little box shape. I'm going to make a pillar. So this is kind of the main trunk of the pillar. And so I am just using some wood glue and then also some hot glue. And then to give it a little stability, I'm using a wooden dowel on the little where the joints are, where they meet on the inside, so that way it has a little bit more surface area to glue. Then I'm taking two of these boxes from Dollar Tree that come with the little lid, and I am taking the bottom portion of the box, turning it upside down and putting it over that decorative portion of the lid, as you can see here. And I'm going to do this 2 times, so 1 for each end. And then I have some squares that come in a package of like 4 or 5 that I'm going to finish off the ends with. So I'll just put some glue on that and then glue the box lid to that little square. And so that's what's going to finish off the end of our pillar. And then I will go ahead and glue the pillar onto either end, or glue either end onto the pillar trunk or the base. I've also seen like some wooden pencil boxes or little pencil holders at Dollar Tree that you could easily try and do if you didn't want to make your own. I didn't love the size of that. I wanted something a little bit bigger, but I mean, that would definitely work if you want to kind of simplify this down even further. That's definitely an option for you. But like I said, I'm just using the wood glue and hot glue to give both that long-term and short-term hold on this. I wanted it to hold up really well. And then I'm going to paint mine. So you could stain it, you could paint it, whatever you'd like to do. I paint mine and then I go ahead and distress it quite a bit. You'll see how I do that here in a minute. But I'm just giving it a really good coat of the white Waverly chalk paint, or actually I think it's the plaster color. But whatever color you have or would want to do would work just fine. Then I start distressing this with my little file there, going over all of the edges, but then I take some wax, just the antiquing wax. You could also use any type of brown paint, and I just dry brush that. I'm doing a pretty heavy dry brush on here, and then I do kind of go back over it after that dries with a little bit more white to kind of tone it down, as you'll be able to see. And I love the way that this turns out. I love the tone that it's getting, but of course you can customize this to whatever. I know this style is probably not everyone's, but here it is as like a plant stand with a plant on it. I think this turned out so cute. I've used this all year long and I absolutely love it. I would like to thank you so much for joining me for today's compilation video. I hope that you enjoyed all of these DIYs. If you had a favorite, let me know down in the comments. I always love to hear which ones you guys like the best. Thank you so much for watching today. I'll see you next time. Happy crafting! If you like the video that you just saw and you want to keep crafting together, here's another video that you might enjoy. And as always, remember to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.